Good evening, everyone. We're just talking about times we wake up because I'm tired because I've been up too early this week. But yeah, I'm one of those people who wakes up before their alarm all the time. My alarm's set for, I hear my alarm about half a dozen times a year.
Hmm.
Other than that, I get up 5 minutes before my alarm and turn it off.
I tend to be a light sleeper, so any noise will wake me up pretty quickly.
Ah,
So the alarm go off. I used to get up years ago. I would have an annoying alarm, one of those,
oh, I got one of those.
and I had to get rid of it
Oh,
because
yeah.
one time I got up and I could not hear out of my left ear, and it was like since then it was like that's it. I'm switching over, I think, to radio, which
So
was weird
I figure I'll
because
never get up then.
with the radio, many times if I have the radio on, it
Good
will be
evening, Tit
Z1.
Goblin.
This now again, this is years ago. It would be
Right.
Z100,
Uh
and I would be like on the show as
huh.
part of them, and I would be talking, but no one's reacting to me. So I always had the reoccurring dream every morning. I'm part of the show. I'm there, but I'm not really there, so to speak.
Wow. I'm there, but
Hello,
not
Tick Goblin.
there. Huh. Do you ever, one of the things I read this week was something from my shelf. And it was one of those things where I was looking around. Good evening, the comic board. Happy Friday.
Hello, hello.
Good evening, Mind the Comics.
Welcome.
And I ended up, I don't remember getting this. I don't remember reading it. Richard Sala, the Grave Robber's Daughter. I don't know if you're
Oh,
familiar with Richard Sala.
I don't believe so.
He has done a lot of. He actually died in 2020. He was only 65, but he was one of those names. Let me show you his style. He was one of those names I knew for years, but never bought anything of his. Like he's a Fantagraphics guy, I think.
Okay.
Is this from Fantagraphics? Let me see. Yeah, this is a Fantagraphics book. And I think that if I remember right, the first thing I picked up from him was a Fantagraphics used to do this series called their, I don't know, American comic book series, or so I can't even remember what it was. But there were these oversized like comic books. I think they were actually bigger than magazine size. And they were like 32 pages. And he did a book called Delphine, which had 4 issues and then was collected at a smaller size. I never got issue 4. So it's like, I've been looking for issue, but it's out of print and you can't find it anywhere. But that was the
Right.
first time I read his stuff, which was probably 15 years ago now,
Hmm.
at least. So I saw this on my shelf and I was like, The Grave Robber's Daughter? What the heck is that? Shouldn't I remember getting it? So I pulled it down a few weeks ago to read. It sat in my to be read pile for a while. Finally, this week I decided to read. Didn't remember it at all. TGIF, gentlemen. Good evening, 62 Lefty Blues. So then I decided to look it up on my blog. Even before I was doing YouTube, on my blog, radiantcomics.com. I was writing like every week. I'd just have a post that says comics I bought this week,
Hmm.
and I for a while there I was doing reviews of something I read that week too. So I said, let me look it up on my blog and see when I got it. And I can't remember who it was because this came out in 2006. It was either, I can't remember right now, but it was either 07 or 09 that I got this. And not only did I get it, I wrote a little review of it.
Oh wow. Okay, so you already read it.
So yeah, I already read it 13 or 14 years ago. Forgot
Wow.
it completely.
Hmm.
It was like reading it, it was like completely new to me. Then I went back and read my review and went, Oh yeah. All of a sudden, I like had a whole new. All of a sudden, I had a view of it from 13 years ago, Jared, and saw his thoughts on it. It was kind of like weird.
That's pretty neat in a way that
Yeah.
that you rediscovering something that you had
I,
already.
I, another one I did that with. Have you ever read David Mazzucchelli's Asterius Polyp?
No, I don't think I even heard of it.
One graphic novel probably came out about the same time as this, maybe 2008 or something like that.
Mhm.
And I bought it when it came out because I'm a David Mazzucchelli fan. Old age is a bitch. Who's the artist? Yeah, that's Richard Sall I was talking about right here. He's the artist writer. And this one but it was like I said, Asterius Polyp, as I get off track again. I bought it back then, read it. I even wrote a review of it back then. I remember thinking it was okay. And then I read it just like last year, maybe. 10, 12 years later. I was like, I'm going to read Asterius Polyp again. And I liked it so much better that second time around. And I wrote I wrote a new review of it. So I've like got a review of it in like 2010 and a review of it in like 2020. But one of the interesting things was Asterius Polyp was about this architect who was kind of, I guess he was retired. He was having like a midlife crisis kind of, and maybe leaving architecture or whatever. It's a whole big story going on. But when I read it the first time, I was younger than Asterius Polyp. When I read it the second time, I was older than Asterius Polyp. So it was kind of like I think that affected how I perceived it too.
I could see that. I had kind
Yeah,
of a similar reaction to a movie
yeah,
where watching something like Fast Times at Ridgemont High,
right.
80s movie back in the day. When it came out, I watched it when I was young, and I saw it through the viewpoint of the students. Then I was older and I watched it, and then now I see it through the viewpoint of the teachers.
Yeah, yeah.
And realized it was like, as a kid, I watched things like these teachers are mean. That's not right. As an adult, I watch it like these kids are stupid.
That teacher should have been meaner.
Exactly. And then you see it is like, wow. And it's interesting to revisit things like that,
Yeah.
where sometimes we revisit stuff for nostalgia, and then you go
Hmm.
back to it, it's like, how did I like this? It's like
Oh
sometimes
yeah,
you
that
can't
happens.
revisit stuff, especially
Right.
a lot of old cartoons.
Well, some stuff it depends on what age you saw it.
That's true too.
That
That is very true.
because when you're 8, everything is fresh and new to you.
Hmm.
So you'll have a different reaction. I first heard about Salah from For the Love of Comics channel and Earl Grey. Yeah, like I said, Salah was one of those guys I heard about for years, but it was probably not until like 2006 or 7 that I actually bought something of his, Delphine. So I was like, he died 2 years ago. But this one was kind of interesting in that it was, here's our lead character back there, and she just kind of is driving around. Has Asterius Polyp is a bit pretentious, but see, I thought it was pretentious the first time around. 10 years later, I didn't think it was so pretentious. Comic Craft has a couple of videos on Asterius Polyp. Yes, but like I said, she's her car breaks down. She ends up walking to this strange little town, and in this strange little town, like everybody's missing, nobody's around, and there's this weird carnival around with only teenagers hanging out at it, and it gets to be interesting because it's like you don't realize at first that she's kind of like a hard boiled private detective character. You don't realize that at first, but she keeps being confronted by stuff, and she's just and instead of acting like a normal scared person, she acts like a hard boiled private detective character. This stuff doesn't frighten her so
Right.
much. So it was interesting to read that. And, some supernatural stuff happens and some scary clowns come after her that she's not scared by the scary clowns at all. She just punches them in the face. But a decent story. I enjoyed it. Like I said, it was all new to me since I didn't remember it in the least. When I said, been going through your blog archive this week. It's funny about forgetting, reading, and buying something because you also post a lot of good blog essays on memory and how it differs. Yeah, Inception music, right? I have written many blogs on memory and how it. One of the a lot of my blogs too. I love one of the reasons I love memory too and how it works is I love observing everyday things that get forgotten. Like that's one of the things I'd like to write about is sort of the everyday things that get forgotten over time. Like sometimes I write about my routines, like whatever routine I have for something, for making a picture or this, because that's the stuff that just gets forgotten over time. It's like, can you remember whatever your routine was about drawing or working from 20 years ago? No, because you don't think about it anymore because you're busy with whatever your routine is today.
Yeah, because with routines, it's like I like having a routine. I
Me
don't
too.
necessarily like the taste of coffee,
Yeah.
but I like the act of going out, getting a cup of coffee from like Dunkin' or whatever. This is not a sponsored thing. But again, it's one of those things where when we were at Marvel, I
Right.
always went to get coffee because there's the interaction with the other coffee drinkers.
Right.
There's the from where I was located compared to where the kitchen was, I got a good halfway through the building walk around. And I liked that because I just didn't want to, because sitting in the office by myself or with an intern, but there's a lot of times, especially in the morning, where there is a routine that you want to get going because, you know, I have some memories of Marvel
Right.
because every day was kind of the same thing. Art comes in, art goes out.
Right.
And it was very boring and that kind of things. You only
Right.
remember the interactions when an artist came in, and then it was excitement because something's going on.
The actual job itself was very dull,
Yes.
but the people were interesting.
Hmm.
Here's it.
Exactly.
Here's so my your blog on your last college day with friends playing basketball on campus was a nice read. I remember writing that one too because you mentioned Marvel, and being that I've always been a picture taker, a lot of my memories can be based on photos because they really set something in your memory, especially keeping track of them and writing down dates. I can always go back and look. I can jog my memory with a photo, but certain things that were never photographed are a different thing entirely. What he's talking about there is I wrote about a blog. I wrote about a blog when I just it happened to be a memory of one of my last days at my first college where I remember it too because it was such a nice day. I was with my friends and we were all like, it was a 2-year college. We'd been together for 2 years, but we were all about to graduate and go off and do other things. So it was like, this is the last time the four of us were going to be together hanging out. And we were hanging out in an area of the campus where we usually weren't. And I have no pictures of it, but I still remember it. And I was writing down the memory because all I had was the memory of it. So I ended up writing it down in a blog before I forgot it. But that's that was like a pure memory. And like I said, memory is association. You associate, that's how you remember things, by association, which is why photos help because you
Yes.
associate with the photo. But that thing I had no associate, which is often when we were talking to other people, um, and they tell you something you've completely forgot, and all of a sudden it comes back to you because you're associating it with something they were talking about. And you're like, oh yeah, I remember that now.
It's wild to me to see pictures from someone else's point of view. So they
Oh
took a
yeah,
picture and you have no idea that that picture exists, and then
right.
it
That's
pops up.
always
And
strange.
there's a few of them on Facebook where I went to a party. I'm not sure which con it was, but I
Right,
think it was like a mocha party, and I have no memory of that party. But
right.
I'm there. I'm there with Nelson. I'm there with a bunch of other people
And you're
that
like,
I
"There I
know.
am."
But it's like here I am at a party. I have no idea what that party was for. I don't know what that event for. I mean, it was written down that it was,
Right, right,
and it was connected to a convention. I think, like I said, I think it was Mocha, but I have no memory of that party. And then there are people there that it's like I didn't know that person then,
right,
and they were at that party,
right. Those
and
are,
it's like
it's
that's
funny.
wild.
Like, even this one, reading it, like I said, I had no memory of this. When I read it, it was like it was all new to me. But then when I looked up and read my review of it from 12 years ago, all of a sudden my I could remember it. I could remember how what I thought. I was like, oh yeah, that's what now I remember reading it. So it was like I have two separate memories of reading it. It's so
Hmm.
strange.
Or it's
But
like
but yeah, seeing a photo of yourself that you didn't know existed at a place you forgot about is like, whoa.
yeah, there was a one that popped up, and again, that's the interesting thing with Facebook now is people are sharing
Oh
photos from
yeah,
way back when. So this is about probably early days of Facebook,
right.
and a photo popped up from one of my high school friends, and it's a picture of me in the hallway, and some other friends are there too. I didn't remember the image, but it unlocked the shirt that I was wearing. Because in the
Ah.
photograph, I was in like a Hawaiian print T-shirt. I'm not T-shirt. The big Hawaiian print shirts, and it was like it unlocked a memory that I remember my mom had bought a slew of these shirts at Kmart. They were
Huh.
like $1 practically.
Ah.
So there was like 2 weeks worth of shirts bought for me. And I completely forgot about it until I saw that one picture, and it unlocked the fact that in high school, in the 11th grade, for that whole year, I wore almost everything was just Hawaiian print shirts, all different colors. But it was like I completely forgot about that part of the year until that one picture
Yeah.
showed up.
Good evening,
Hello,
Paolo.
Good
how you
evening,
doing, Pablo?
people.
And
What
we're
is up?
right now we're talking about memory and how it works because this is one of the things I read this week.
Hmm.
Richard Sala, The Grave Robber's Daughter, and I found it on my shelf.
Hmm.
And I was like, I had no memory of it. And I read it and I even looked up on my blog and like 12 to 14 years ago I got it and read it and wrote a review of it. And it was like so strange that it's like reading something you forgot existed. And you're past about you found the picture of Marvel's temporary floor they used for a short time. You only had one dark picture you had to clear up and found yeah. That's another one. I've talked about it before. 1992, the year that Marvel redid the 10th floor. So we all had to go down to the fourth floor for temporary offices for like the summer, for like 2, 3 months while they redid the front. And I took no pictures on the fourth floor. So it was always kind of this hole in my memory. And then it was Elliot Brown who posted a bunch of pictures from it. He came in one day and Elliot Brown worked in the bullpen. He was the one who did all those Punisher cutaway drawings and stuff like that. Do you remember those? He
He
did
did the photo,
Punisher's
and he did all.
armory and stuff like that.
I believe he also did all the photo covers.
Yes, he did photo covers too. He worked in the bullpen, I think the late 70s into the 80s, and he took a lot of pictures in the bullpen in the 80s. And so he posted some of them on his website. Um, and he one day went in and took all these pictures of the fourth floor. So I was like looking at him going, wow, it was just fascinating to me because it was like the fourth floor only existed in memory to me. It didn't exist in any of my photographs. So that was strange.
It is cool to see the photos that Elliot has because
Oh
he
yeah.
has so many different time periods,
Yeah.
and so it's like the faces are familiar, and even the location is just familiar but different.
Yeah.
And it's different just enough that it's like, oh, that became this or that office because when I started, the renovations already happened.
Right.
Matter of fact, when I was supposed to start, I didn't start because they were in the middle of painting. So
Mm.
by the time I came in, the renovations were all done. And speaking of memories, I unlocked one about my very first day working at Marvel, where, I joke around because I talk about the fact that I started on St. Patrick's Day.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't much done. And a lot of people I met was at the bar. And we got to the bar pretty early. But walking around, Gary was showing me around. When we walked through the building, through the bullpen, there was a big meeting happening. And
Uh-huh.
you were at the center of it.
I was.
You were at the center table.
Uh-huh.
Like the table was moved to the center of the bullpen, and everyone was around you, and you were refusing to sign some sort of paperwork, or you were questioning, why should I have to sign this paper?
Okay. That
And Gary was like, I forget what he said exactly, but it
what
was
year was
something.
this?
This was 1993, I
Yes.
believe, because that's when I started as an intern. I
Okay.
think 93 or 94. And it was right after the renovations because, again, I didn't come in because the ninth floor was being painted, because Gary
Okay.
and I were on the ninth floor. So we went up to the 10th floor, walked through the bullpen, and he said it had to do with something about
Okay.
freelancing. And I clearly remember you were in the center. Virginia was there. I think even John Sr. was there, and then the rest of the bullpen around. And you were questioning why you should sign this thing.
Okay. The only thing I could think that was there was something later on I know it wasn't, which is when Michael Golden quit when they wanted everybody to sign a loyalty agreement. Well, literally a loyalty agreement. Michael Golden was like, "No, thanks, I'm out of here." He was looking to quit too. He was like, "No,
Uh-huh.
I'm not signing
Yeah,
some."
like I said, this way before that, and it was
It
like,
must have had something to do with the stock. I have a vague memory of something them wanting people to sign something about the stocks, like you wouldn't give out information, like because it was a big deal when Marvel went public, which was the early '90s. Sometime I can't remember when,
right.
and I am guessing that it had something to do with that. And I was going, how would we have inside information? I was probably going, us? They want us to sign this? How would we possibly have inside information that could affect the stock market? I, I,
They
I
weren't
may
telling
have
us
said
anything.
that. Like I said, I have that could have been it. I would imagine. I can't remember anything. I can't specifically remember having to sign anything, but that sounds familiar to me. Me going, they want us to sign something about the stock market? Are you crazy?
So if that was in 94,
Yeah, probably 93 a little. That was might have been the 93, 94, he said, right?
Yeah,
okay,
that's when
so
I
that
started. I don't remember the exact date, if it was 93 to 94 or if it was at 94.
Yeah.
that's when they started with the crazy idea that they're going to be bigger than Disney. That's why they would
That
need.
could have been. Like I said, that I can't remember when they went public. It may have been 93, but when they went public, it was like woohoo, and their stock shot up like crazy. That's probably when they thought they were going to be bigger than Disney.
Because that's when they started. But they started buying stuff around 91, 92,
Yeah.
and in 94 they would need capital influx in order to raise the value and create more stock.
How about memories of reading a specific comic in a specific time or place? I remember being a specific age and reading comics. Like I remember like the epic getting Epic Illustrated #2 when I was on vacation in Lake Placid. That I remember. I think that I got my first like Fantastic Four like 193 or something when I was on vacation there too. Otherwise, I bought all my comics at just about the same spot, so I don't always remember them. So,
For
but I
me,
have a few.
depends on the comic book. My early years,
Yeah.
I could look at a comic book and go, "Oh, I think I bought this one at this particular store," because I had to hit 3 or
Right.
4 stores before I got all the
I
books.
usually only had one store where I bought comics, so there's not a. But like I can remember things too, like there. I don't know why. Once again, it was one of my first Spider-Man comics when I started. I should. It was this the Stegron, one of the Stegron Spider-Man issues, 160, 167, 172. I don't remember what. I'd have to look at it, but I can remember shoveling my driveway in the winter. And it was like my reward for shoveling the driveway was getting this Spider-Man comic. So I don't know why that sticks out to me, but it still does all these years later.
You were conned. You
Yeah.
could have done that for 3 Spider-Man comics.
I don't even know if someone I think I think it was even the reward I gave myself. Because like you said, I was shoveling that driveway no matter what. I had no choice in shoveling the driveway. But I can remember for some reason, I may have said it to myself, after I finish shoveling this driveway, I'm going over and getting a comic. And it was a Spider-Man comic.
Yeah.
Usually, probably.
Usually I don't remember. I usually bought a comic and brought it home to read. Sometimes I'd buy one at the beach. But usually there were 4 or 5 newsstands that I could buy a comic from. So
the only place I was at a newsstand that wasn't around my house was when we were on vacation in Lake Placid, which was we usually went for 2 weeks in the summer and like a long weekend in the spring and fall. So there's like 3 times a year was the only time really I was anywhere that wasn't my local 7-Eleven at the beginning and Stout Steve's later on. So it's like I just didn't, those were the only places, or Mary's, that was a third store, pardon me. They sometimes had comics.
My early years, I used to buy a lot of them from various newsstands because, again, they didn't carry everything. And so I have memories to those newsstands and certain books that I picked out. And I clearly remember picking up The Dark Knight Returns, flipping through it and going, I don't like this, and putting it right back in the rack. And it wasn't until like issue 3 where someone was like, no, you have to really read it. Ignore the art, just really read it. Because I did not like the artwork when I first saw that. And there's other times where it was an issue of the X-Men where Wolverine is getting ready to stab one of the Power Pack kids. And it's just a striking cover. And I remember another kid freaking out just at looking at the cover. I was like, I remember buying that issue because of that kid freaking out. Where it's like, Wolverine went insane. What is he doing? Like verbally, like freaking out on a cover. And it's like, oh, I gotta buy this. I was buying it anyway. But again, it's one of those things where those are the things that hit me. Where it's like, oh, I could see a book and kind of remember when I got it or what I was doing around that time.
Right, those old ones I can. Marvel's Fourth Floor sounds like some X-Files title. It needs Sleepwalker as its character or a Doctor Strange dimension. Everything crazy happens in that Twilight Zone floor in the book. I can see Marvel's Fourth Floor. And, the janitor is Doctor Strange. Some Doctor Strange. Dr. Druid is the janitor.
Dr. Druid,
he tells you stories about the fourth floor.
One thing that we had that the Brazilians had, they were very good at writing, at designing their in-house heads and writing copy for it. So even if you knew there was something that it might look out of the ordinary, like Frank Miller's art on Dark Knight Returns, they would be pretty good at convincing you that thing was very, very good and was going to revolutionize comics.
I didn't have access to anything like that at that time. That was before I discovered any comic-related periodicals. So I didn't know about Comics Buyer's Guide. Wizard hasn't been invented yet. The closest thing I would have would be Marvel Age, and that only gave me information about Marvel.
Right.
Yeah.
So I probably didn't discover hype magazine type of things
Right.
until I started going to a comic book shop.
Like I was going through the Incredible Hulk, and there would be an ad for that month's Woody Woodpecker comic. The thing is, even when it comes to advertising their superhero books, the Brazilians did better ads than Marvel and DC's internal ads.
And speaking of memory, if we remember all the way back to last week, in that Millie the Model comic I showed you that had the Stan Goldberg cover with all the 60s art references,
Yeah.
well, I went and got myself a copy.
Oh, nice.
I liked it so much. I went on eBay. This copy was about $26. And one of the reasons I wanted it, I scanned it in at 1200 DPI and started cleaning it up. And I wanted to make my own big poster size version of it. I actually want to print it bigger than this. It's not quite all the way cleaned up, but I got it pretty good so far. If anyone, I'll make the digital file available when I'm done with it. But I was like, you know what? This just amused me so much. I liked this so much. I went out and spent my once again spent my Hate Complete Edition money on other things.
And made pop art out of it.
Made pop art out of it. This cost me $26. Like the Hate would have cost me, I think, 80 to 100, 90 to 100, let's say. So instead, I finally went, you know what? Instead of buying that big edition right now, I'm going to go look for the smaller versions I never got. One of the reasons I never got these is because they're slightly smaller than a regular comic. And that never really appealed to me. But this was $7 on eBay, shipped. So I'm like, you know what? I may as well get this and Millie the Model. And then I got the other one, which I got off of Amazon for $12 shipped. Or I should say $13, I think it was shipped.
Right.
This was $8, this was $13. It was $21 altogether. So I was like, you know what? Why spend the 80 to 100 on the oversized ones? I'll just keep those on my wish list for now and have these volumes of them. And I already had the third, much slimmer volume, which is Buddy Buys a Dump. So it's these 3 volumes that the Oversized Complete Hate collects.
Okay.
And if you don't want the oversized ones, get these. Buddy does Seattle, Buddy does New Jersey, and Buddy Buys a Dump. And you can buy them a lot cheaper. That's why I was like, you know what? I bought that. I bought this. I ended up buying the Archie one too, but it hasn't come yet. And I also bought, let me show you this. I don't know if there's a new version, a new Great Gatsby graphic novel, which just came out this week. It happened to pop up in my on my Amazon list because by Peter Katz, and this is the 4th Great Gatsby graphic novel. Well, one came out in the early 2000s. This is the 3rd that's come out in the last few years since it's gone public domain. And out of the 4 of them I have, this is by far the worst.
Really?
Not even close. The art in it's not bad. Let me show you some of the art. But the amateur hour lettering. Whoo! The word balloons are... Like, the art is not bad. The word balloons are 100% amateur hour is the problem. Of course, it's done digitally, but it's all done with ellipses and straight, and there's tangents everywhere too.
Wow.
It's so distracting to read the lettering. And as I was saying on my haul this week, when you do lettering, you usually don't make the word balloons perfect ellipses. You usually kind of flatten out your ellipses a while to a little bit to, as Wilson knows, and curve your pointers a little bit. That's just generally more pleasing to the eye. Unless you're Tom Orzechowski or Spawn. Tom Orzechowski, I think, is the only letterer I know who uses, because I think he even did this by hand. He used ellipse templates, but his are much better. But it's considered sort of an amateur thing to make giant ellipse template word balloons. And this one is just filled with it. But that's not the worst. The worst part is this art. I guess there's only one person credited, Peter Katz. So I guess he's the writer too. He rewrote some of the text. He rewrote F. Scott Fitzgerald. And let me tell you, it's not better. I mean, like, the other three just edited it, which you would expect. I actually think The Great Gatsby is better suited for a graphic novel than a movie, because the novel itself is all narration and dialogue. So, dialogue, you got your word balloons. Narration, you got your caption. All you got to do is edit it. Cut out what you don't want to make your story. But the one thing you don't do is rewrite the text. It's just like, what kind of lunatic does that? Let me give you an example. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can share my screen. I actually posted these on Facebook earlier today, so I have them. Where are they? Oh, those are the word balloons. Look at these big ellipses. Let's take a look at this one. Here is the original text. There was music from my neighbor's house through the summer nights. In his blue gardens, men came and went like moths among the whisperings and champagne and the stars. At high tide in the afternoon, I watched his guests diving from the tower of his raft or taking the sun on the hot sand of his beach, while his two motorboats slit the water of the Sound, drawing aquaplanes over cataracts of foam. On weekends, his Rolls-Royce became an omnibus, bearing parties to and from the city between 9 in the morning and long past midnight, while his station wagon scampered like a brisk yellow bug to meet all trains. Here's how he rewrote it. He did the same first sentence. There was music from my neighbor's house through the summer nights. In his gardens, people came and went like moths among the whisperings in the champagne and the stars. In the afternoons, his guests swam or sunbathed on his beach. On weekends, his Rolls-Royce ferried parties to and from the city, while his station wagon sped to meet all trains. It was just like, huh?
Station wagon.
His station wagon. I guess they had station wagons in 1922. Or something they called station wagons.
Well, yeah, there were. But you don't go from Rolls-Royce to station wagon.
Well, Gatsby, that was in the original one. I think he called it a station wagon, but I don't know why he would. Well, I know why he wanted less words, but just edit some words out. That's what all the other adaptations do. They all use like I said, it's actually pretty easy in terms of the narration is the captions, the word balloons are the dialogue. But he did, and that's not the only, he did it like various, I couldn't even read it. I'm reading it going, oh my goodness, why would you? Yeah, I don't know what they called the station wagon in 1922. Just like when he said another line which I don't understand was when he said he smiled like a weatherman. Now, I would understand what that means now, but what would that mean in 1922 before TV weathermen?
Right. It's like you don't update the dialogue to fit modern times and keep it in that back time period.
Yeah, it's strange. And one of the other things he did, which I found strange, was he dialed down the racism in terms of one of the characters, Tom. Well, I guess you could call the antagonist, but I don't think there's really an antagonist in Gatsby. But he's the character you're not supposed to like, or at least not supposed to like that much. He's the rich guy with racist tendencies. King Spoet in the house. And one of the things they do in this is they just like they still do today. If you want to establish a guy as a bad guy, you make him racist. So at one point, we first learn that Tom is like that when he says, when he starts talking about this book he just read, The Rise of the Colored Empires, which, as he says, is all about how the white race will be submerged if they don't watch out. No, the same racist stuff you'd hear today. But him, instead of calling the book The Rise of the Colored Empires, calls it The Decline of the Nordic Empires or something. They're the Nordic race. And it was like, just to get that, it was like that softens his racism to me. And it wasn't really hard to begin with. The Rise of the Colored Empires isn't exactly hard racist type. It's not the N-word or something like that. So I found that weird. And then they also there's another woman who's racist in the book. And once again, they're supposed to be showing the sort of crudeness and racism of some people on occasion. And this one woman at the party says this, and the one woman's talking about her bad marriage and how she's in a bad marriage. And the other woman is telling her about how she's was almost in a bad marriage. And she said, "This little kike almost married me." Now, obviously, kike is there as an anti-Jewish slur to show you that this woman isn't the nicest of people. And in this, they changed it to Jewish boy. This little Jewish boy. I'm like, I'm not sure if that's less of a slur. Well, but if it was, it kind of softened. So it's like they softened and it's not that this book was filled with racism. Like it was kind of used just like they use it today to establish that this person isn't necessarily an enlightened, a good person. They've got flaws, and racism is one of them. So it was weird but at least I can understand them change. He's like, "Oh, I don't want those words in there." At least I can understand that. But changing Fitzgerald's other text is just like, whew, dude, you're not that good a writer.
It's wild to be able to, the fact that there are so many books coming out with Great Gatsby, that you can look at it as so many different angles and what people are doing with it. But to change it that much, that to me is even wilder.
Yeah. Why would you adapt Gatsby and change his text? That makes no sense. Garments look good. I have to say the women's fashion looks good, but it doesn't, like I said, first of all, I think the movies have followed he follows the movies in that. In the book, Daisy is a brunette and Jordan is a blonde. But for some reason in the movies, they had Daisy be a blonde and Jordan be a brunette. One of the problems with Daisy being blonde, another point of Tom's racism is, I was just reading something about it later on when I was looking it up. Daisy in this book might be sort of secretly Jewish. By what I mean by secretly is they don't tell us. He doesn't tell us, the reader. But it was apparently in an earlier draft, and there's a hint of it when the whole thing where Tom is talking about the book about the white race being submerged. He says something about and he says something about us being white people, and then he hesitates a moment before acknowledging that Daisy is white. So there's a weird thing that it's just like a weird moment where like, is he racist against his own wife? And it would make sense if she was secretly Jewish, then he wouldn't consider her white, especially in 1922. But making her a blonde kind of downplays that too. It says there is a so that I always find that strange when they make Daisy a blonde. But one of the weird things about the garment in this is they gave Nick Nick wears a bow tie, and for some reason I'm like, I don't think he'd wear a bow tie, but he may have in the movie. Looks like they gave Gatsby a bow tie too. I don't know how many people wore bow ties in 1922, but I wasn't drawing many bow ties when I was drawing this stuff. You're buying Gatsby everything. It reminds me of the guy that got everything with Felix on it when he was told that Todd McFarlane had said he would Felix in every Spawn issue so he would have a sale. Oh, that's right. Have you ever heard that story about Todd McFarlane drawing a Felix the cat in every Spawn issue?
Not in Spawn, every Spider-Man issue. Because I used to look for them. It's Spider-Man.
Maybe
every issue is
Spawn.
Every issue is Spider-Man. He drew Felix the cat somewhere in it. So it became a little Easter egg with it. But I don't know if he brought that over to Spawn.
Right. Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, that sounds worse and not historically accurate for the time. K was one of the many Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why you'd want to soften the races. Maybe you just don't want to use that word. I can understand it, but in the context of the book, you're trying to establish that this person is a racist. It's tough to do without using racist language. There are lots of things like that in the older books. Just a hint would be enough for the audience to know. Yeah. Also, if they're Irish Catholic in a WASP environment, right, they might not be considered. Bow ties were very common. Okay. Didn't novelist John Irving include a bear in every one of his novels? Ooh, I don't know. I don't think I've ever read any John Irving. Like this one, I'll put it on the shelf with my other Gatsbys, but it's unreadable. It just, every time I come to a passage where first of all, looking at the lettering is just tough. It's just like, ooh. Every time I look at it, I just want to fix it. Oh man, I gotta put that aside. I'll keep it, but I don't think this is one I'm gonna look at much because it hurts my eyes. But it's hard to believe 3 Gatsby graphic novel adaptations. But I put that AWA Gatsby that's coming out in a couple of months on my pull list too. Do you know the comic book company AWA?
I've seen their logo before. I don't think I ever read anything from them.
It's like artists, writers, I can't remember. But they're putting out, it's not an adaptation. It's, an updating of the Gatsby novel. That's fine. With something like that, you don't use Gatsby. You don't use his text. There's no reason to use Fitzgerald's text. I'm fine with them rewriting Gatsby and doing something new and using that makes sense to me. But if you're doing an adaptation, you don't rewrite the text. How did you get through life not reading The World According to Garp? I remember when that was big. I somehow just didn't. I think when that was big was when I was in like high school and college. I can't remember the year. And I was a sci-fi reader then. And then for like the next 25 years, I read nonfiction. I only started reading fiction again about 5 years ago. Stephen King hides a little alcoholic writer from Maine doodle on every one of his book pages. It's just super tiny, so you can't see him all the time. But yeah, Tom Warzakowski is the only letterer I know of who does perfect ellipse balloons. And this issue of Spawn was all right. They're pretty solid now with Rory McConville writing them.
Okay.
And Carlo Barberi is pretty solid artist, so Much better than reading the Todd McFarlane issue.
So Todd's not doing any art in it. I know he was inking
No.
for a while.
No, he's not doing any. I think he may be doing one of the other Spawn books. He may be doing something. I think he's more hands-on with, I don't know, the other Spawn universe books he was getting ready to start.
Oh, okay.
But speaking of universe books, this one is not making my pull list. The Dead Lucky. I don't remember. You probably don't even remember this one because I didn't have much to say about it a month ago. This is the Dead Lucky #2. It's part of the Supermassive universe, along with Radiant Black, which I buy, Radiant Red, which just ended as a miniseries, and Rogue Sun. And I bought the first issue, and it didn't really grab me. So I said, I'll give it one more issue because I liked the other stuff in the universe. And this one grabbed me even less. I barely made it through it. I don't even remember what it was about. I just remember finding the writing and art very disjointed. Yeah, you ever do that? You pick up a comic book, you read it, and you're just like, I'm not 100% sure what's going on in this comic. The art's pleasant enough to look at. What was that?
I've ran into that where you pick up something and it's not what you thought it would be or what it's going to be.
It's not even not what I thought it was going to be. It's I don't understand what's going on in it. Sort of visually, it's like I can follow it, but I'm not involved with it. I've got no emotional investment in it. And it's hard to read because it's just people doing things. Not even sure what they're doing. I'm not even sure which character is which. Some bright, pretty art, but I just couldn't get into it at all. So this one is not making on the pull list. Let's see. Never read John Irving, but I remember my friends who liked his work talked about a bear in his books. In the 80s, my go-to writers were Henry Miller and D.H. Lawrence. I couldn't even tell you who my go-to writers were, besides nonfiction. I got a free copy of Spawn the Impaler at my shop this week. It's worth looking up. Okay. I came across the story G.G. Allen told about being arrested when before the arrest he was fingering his girlfriend in a car while she read The World According to Garp. Worth looking up how bad it is. Oh, okay. That Spawn the Impaler is worth looking up how bad it is. Oh, man. I read the first issue of all those new Spawn books and went, I don't need all these new Spawn books. One is enough.
Spawn the Impaler is an old Spawn miniseries.
Oh, it's an old one. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Still from the 90s.
Oh, that's not one of the newer ones. All right. No.
Basically, Dracula was a Spawn.
Okay. Speaking of not getting into stuff, I was watching Sleepy Reader's video today. I didn't get all the way through it either. I didn't get to have much on as I was working. But he was reviewing, I think it was an Ant-Man book he bought. And he was saying one of the problems with it was he couldn't really get into it. And he thought one of the reasons was, I forget who the writer was, but he said he expects you to know everything about the Ant-Man universe. And but that led me to a thought I've had before where if you're working with a sort of a corporate-owned character, there's downsides and upsides to it. Of course, one of the biggest upside, of course, is built-in customers, people familiar with it. The downside to me, especially of reading, if you're going to read a corporate-owned character like a Batman or whoever, is they take it that they expect you to be already invested in the character. Because that's Marvel and DC sell the character over the creator. Marvel and DC want you to think Spider-Man and Batman are more important than Steve Ditko and Frank Miller or whoever. That's their approach. They want you buying Spider-Man and Batman no matter who's on it. And people do. But of course, people also respond to creators too. But the problem is, like, for someone like me, I am invested in no Marvel or DC characters. None. I don't care. So if I pick up a Marvel or DC book, you have to make me want to care about the character in some way. And most writers just don't. They don't, because they're not used to doing that. Like if you were buying a new comic book like Dead Lucky, the writer and artist are trying to make you care about this character so you pick up the next issue. That's their job. They know it. They try to do. If you don't care about the characters, you're not going to pick up the next issue. If you're writing and drawing for Marvel and DC, you don't do that. And I think that's also one of the problems when you always hear people say, oh, well, where do I start reading? If I want to read a Batman or Spider-Man story, where do I run? And it's so hard, where do I start? And it's so hard to tell them where to start, too, because there's so few books that make you care about the character. Like if you were to tell somebody, you know, oh, I want to start reading Spider-Man, what should I start with? I wouldn't know. I mean, I'd say start with the Steve Ditko Spider-Man. But what are the odds of somebody today who has never read a comic before embracing the Steve Ditko Spider-Man? I don't know. But like I said, I think that's
my go-to thing always been about like hitting trade paperbacks, where it's like, here you get a whole story to decide if this is what you want to keep. Spider-Man is a little bit of a easier sell because with the 60th anniversary, everything's Spider-Man this year. Everything's gonna be Spider-Man.
But I'm just saying, what trade paperback would you tell somebody? Because you probably at this point, if somebody said, "Oh, I want to get into Spider-Man, what should I buy?" You wouldn't even tell them to buy a comic book, a single issue.
Right, because again, it is one of those things where I would be asking the person things like, do you want the history of Spider-Man, where he began, or do you want to, you know, what is it that you want to go into? But again, a new series just started. I would point them there.
Craven's Last Hunt. I thought of that one too. The problem with Craven's Last Hunt is you have to care about Spider-Man to begin with. You don't care about Spider-Man. Craven's Last Hunt. I don't know how involved you'll be with it.
They said they were going to make a movie about Craven or something, and it was going to be inspired by Craven's Last Hunt. Craven's Last Hunt is unfilmable. I mean, it's not unfilmable in itself, but it's unfilmable as a one-shot story.
So much is internal about it.
Yeah. Craven's Last Hunt only matters to longtime Spider-Man fans who are used to seeing Craven lose to Spider-Man in battle.
Yeah. It'd be a tough one to get you to care about Spider-Man into, because Spider-Man spends most of his time in the grave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have to explain who Vermin is and why it matters, because Vermin appears a lot in the story.
Death of Gwen Stacy, that might be a decent one.
The thing is, here's what normal people expect from comics. You expect them to give them one Spider-Man comic and they're going to love it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're going to buy a new one even if they love it.
I just want to, like I said, to give them one that they could understand and embrace. Like, so many comics don't make you care about the lead character because they don't have to. It's a shortcut. Most fans are already invested in the character, so that they don't have to make. Like, if you're writing a novel, you have to make the people care about the characters.
Yeah,
you don't have to do that in Spider-Man and Batman, and I think that can. Loeb, Sale, Blue, that might work. I mean, like, I don't really know those very well because I never liked them. But I don't like origin stories. But
I don't think people want to spend $20 on a graphic novel.
Yeah,
they still think that they should buy a comic for $1.
Well, even let's just say, even if they're willing to spend the money, I'd talk them out of Spidey and give them Daredevil Yellow. The way you think.
And here's another thing. Up until the 80s, you did not sell characters based on the characters. You started the whole point of the comic is to sell you excitement.
Right.
And if the character is supposed to be colorful enough to attract attention, then there's the excitement, which is you construct a story where something happens, and anything else that's related to character growth is a sideline. And that's because you only notice it if you read 2 Spider-Man comics.
Right, over the long term.
Yeah.
Aggressively relaxing, he says. If someone asked for advice to get into Spider-Man, I would say go to the store and get the most recent issue. That's not bad advice, but like I said, the only downside of that is in any individual issue, the writer doesn't write anything to make you care about Spider-Man. That's the problem with these long-term characters, is if you pick up Spider-Man, they already expect you to care about Spider-Man. That's sort of a shortcut in storytelling, and I understand it. It makes perfect sense. But we don't even that, like, remember the top copy that used to be in comics? Even that makes you, bitten by a radioactive spider, Peter Parker went on to, they'd give you a little origin or a little piece of what the character was about. Even that makes you care about him a little bit.
Yeah, and that half a page with the moment of self-doubt where Peter Parker remembers that with great power comes with responsibility.
Right, but like even that was, I think, with the problem with Sleepy Reader not liking that Ant-Man, because I think it was 3 parts. It was like the Silver Age Ant-Man, the modern Ant-Man, and one in between. I think he said he wasn't even sure who the one in between was, and he didn't really, since he didn't know who it was, and in my opinion, they didn't make him care about that Ant-Man. He was completely disconnected from it. That middle story meant nothing to him, because once again, they expect you to already care about who that Ant-Man was. There was no character growth in comics till Stan Lee. Yeah, that's true. Like I said, to me, Spider-Man was so remarkable because it was the first comic where somebody was on the hero's journey. I think a lot of that was Ditko too.
Yeah, a lot of that was Ditko, and again, I think it comes down to, like, because I'm not currently reading books, I couldn't do many recommendations. But usually when I'm talking to a person about comics, and if they want to get started, there's some questions I want to ask, because it's like, okay, what is it that you want, in a way, from it? If you're interested in Spider-Man, are you interested in him because you watch the movies, the cartoons? With that information, I could steer them more to what they might be looking for.
You might be in luck if they already care about Spider-Man because of the movies.
Right.
Then you're like, oh, okay, this person cares about Spider-Man, so I could give them a Spider-Man. They don't have to. The comic doesn't have to make them care.
Right. And again, it really comes down to, the person. What do they want to do? That they just show up and go, hey, I know a lot of people reading comics. I want to get started. And it's like, okay, then you have to ask the follow-up questions of what is the type of stories you like? Is there something that you like that there might be a comic book adaptation of it, and get you started from there?
But my question is, no matter what you recommended to them, if that comic doesn't make them care about that character, and they have never cared about that character before, will they like the comic? Or will they, like Sleepy Reader, be disconnected from it? Or me from this Dead Lucky? That's the question. Because if they already care about Batman, you can give them a Batman and it's got a fighting chance of interesting them. But if they do not care about Batman and you hand them a Batman comic, will that Batman, like Batman Year One, I think makes you care about Batman. But it has the advantage of being an origin story.
Right.
And other books and other mediums spend the first part of whatever story making you care about the lead character. comics don't do that. At least, Marvel and DC comics don't. All the comics I buy, that are new do, because otherwise they can't sell it.
But aren't the origins, for the most part, kind of always in print? So maybe that would be the way
Yeah,
to
but
read
not all of
this
them,
first.
not all of them are good, and some of them are old, and I don't know if people will want to read them because they look old.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all sorts of stuff. Like, at least I think Batman Year One is kind of timeless. I don't know if every origin story is. When I was a kid and Spider-Man was my favorite, that was the arc where Spider-Man went to college. In the old days, he would be in high school forever. Nowadays, he's in high school forever, isn't he? They keep, like in the movies, they keep putting him back in high school.
Yeah, every relaunch in
Yeah.
media, he's back in high school. And it's
Well, I
like
understand that because, like I said, he's on the hero's journey. He was the first superhero character to be on the hero's journey, and that was what was interesting about Spider-Man was he was on the hero's journey. Soon as he's off the hero's journey, he's like every other character. He's a superhero. Mm-hmm.
I think there's too much of a focus on keeping. There was a focus on keeping him eternally young, although there is not in school, but he makes too many. He acts too childish, just so he can keep having flashbacks to Uncle Ben. The thing is that they're the type of actions that you may have once or twice in your early 20s, but you should grow out of them pretty quickly. And he doesn't, because they don't want to tell people that Spider-Man can be in his 30s.
Yeah, exactly. Because what was special about Spider-Man was he was a teen superhero on the hero's journey. He wasn't Batman, Superman, Iron Man, Captain America, who were kind of fully formed people.
The hero's journey has to end
Yeah.
with the character becoming a full-fledged hero.
Right.
And you can't end Spider-Man.
That's the problem.
So if you keep reading, the less chance the character has in your mind of becoming a hero, because he keeps making mistakes that he should know how to avoid by now. So he's not learning. So he's no longer on the hero's journey.
Right.
He's now the less he evolves, the more irresponsible he becomes. Considering that the thing is, with great power comes great responsibility, it's like he keeps forgetting.
Yeah. That's the tough thing about Spider-Man. As soon as he's grown up, he's not Spider-Man anymore. But he's got to grow up. So it's a tough call.
It's a tough call. It's the double-edged sword of a corporate comic book character.
Right.
That, in a sense that he can't change anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he can grow anymore because of that, because you have it now, this corporate entity. And is there an argument to be made that writers who are coming in, are they there to write a new story, or are they there to write about a character that was their favorite when they were a kid, and now they're kind of like retelling, is it fan fiction at that point?
I think that doesn't matter. It matters, but in practical terms, it doesn't matter, because writers always write their own new stories. Even if you don't want Spider-Man to change, Spider-Man's going to change, because the writers and artists are going to change him. There's no way around that. It's like you keep putting new people on Spider-Man, and unless you're Disney and rigidly enforce visual styles and stuff and writing styles, it's just natural that the next writer has a different view of Spider-Man. And over time, all those views add up to something completely different. Which is why I think people, especially comic book fans of Marvel and DC, complain all the time that their characters are ruined. Because if your Spider-Man is the Spider-Man from 1985 to 1991, then you don't like the Spider-Man from 2006 to 2014. It's a completely different character. If you're a fan, like I grew up with Silver Age guys telling me how bad the comics I were buying was. That was mine. If I ever ran into somebody, 5, 10 years older than me who read comics, they did nothing but talk about how the comics I read were crap and the comics they loved 10 years ago in the Silver Age were great and comics were ruined now. So I think change is inevitable, and I think people don't like when people say they're a Spider-Man fan, they're a fan of Spider-Man from the time when they first started reading Spider-Man. Other than that, they're not. That was one of the good things about the newest Spider-Man movie. You got the old Spider-Man coming back older. Yeah, they keep recasting Spider-Man in the movies. My favorite is "You're Ruining My Childhood." I think it's that the ruining your childhood. Well, that's the way people think the character from their childhood is the Essentials character, and that's how it should be frozen forever, even though it's impossible to freeze it like that. And they don't really like that character. They liked being 12 years old and reading that character.
Yeah. When this new MacGyver TV series started, I tried watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't even make it 5 minutes into the first episode. And when I, of course, when I was a kid, I loved MacGyver. But when I try to rewatch an episode, I just can't, because I'm not a 9-year-old watching MacGyver anymore. So I remember that I liked MacGyver.
King Spoet, Peter Bagg already did that story. I have a movie pitch for you. Old man, Spider-Man. Spider-Man becomes a Ditko-esque shut-in and conspiracy theorist, watches Fox News all day and complains about those damn kids. It's called The Megalomaniacal Spider-Man. It's from the early 2000s, and it's by Peter Bagg. It is brilliant. Amazing. Peter Bagg on a Spider-Man. Is Aunt May still kicking? I don't know.
Oh yeah, she married.
Yeah, she
married J. Jonah Jameson's father.
Oh. I couldn't have even told you that because I haven't read Spider-Man in so long.
Funny thing, Aunt May used to date Dr. Octopus, so.
Yeah, I remember that. Didn't he? They
were engaged. They were at the altar.
That's right. And Hammerhead busted it up.
Yep.
And it was all a scheme to get the deed to the house.
Hammerhead. Who was it? Hammerhead, Ramrod, the Rhino. And there was one other in
issue 56, but I'm not positive.
My Marvel supervillain team, the Headbangers. I think there's 4 or 5 of them. I have it saved here somewhere.
The Headbangers looks like a World Wrestling Federation collective.
It's Man Bull, Bulldozer, Ramrod, the Rhino, and Hammerhead. And there's 2 Hammerheads. There's Hammerhead 1 and 2. They form a supervillain team called the Headbangers because all of their powers are they hit you with their head.
Uh-huh.
Those darn kids in their rock and roll headbanging.
Some more, yeah. Hammer, Doc Ock, and Aunt May. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie. JJ's father must have been around in the Civil War.
J. Jonah Jameson had a podcast or something with Spider-Man as the sidekick. That was kind of ridiculous. I think when they try to insert these things as jokes, they fall flat because the you can't write comedy like that.
I've got 4 deer outside my window now.
They're ganging up on you.
Yeah. We played MacGyver all the time at recess, but got banned from it when we defused the basement bomb and wrecked the school's boiler. That boiler ruined my childhood.
I just had to take some cold
showers.
showers.
Yeah, the school doesn't like it when you defuse the boiler. Generally a bad idea. Let's see, another comic I got this week. Starhenge, Book 1, The Dragon and the Boar. Issue 3 by Liam Sharp. I continue to enjoy this issue. I still can't exactly tell you what the plot is. There's some war going on in the future. Humans versus machines somehow. And that's going, and the humans are about to go extinct. And then there's a couple people in the present who are doing something. And then one of the great leader in the futures, her son has been sent back to the past. Because in the future, magic exists, but it's running. The one advantage humans have over machines is magic, but it's like running out or something. And it didn't always exist in the past. So the woman sent her son, who's also a leader, back to the past to become Merlin. So this whole issue takes place with Merlin and Uther, the Briton, I think he was Briton, in olden days building Stonehenge. And they even say that it makes no sense because somebody once said that Merlin built Stonehenge like hundreds of years ago. And we now know that's not true. It was built in the Neolithic, thousands of years before Merlin. And they're even like, it makes no sense that Merlin is building Stonehenge. We know he didn't build it, but here he is, he's building it. And it has something to do with bringing the magic back so the humans in the future can win the war against the machines. I really like that book, but I hate to read it because I can't figure it out. I don't even try to figure it out. Welsh and appropriated. There we go. Like I said, the thing it reminds me of most is Moonshadow because it's got this weird lyrical tilt to it. The art isn't necessarily literal, and we get a Death Dealer reference here from Uther. A couple of visual references, and there's a little. It's supposed to be a little impenetrable and a little poetic. And even though I don't quite always know, and it's like at the end there was this big appearance by somebody, but like big appearances on the last page mean nothing when it's issue 3 of a new book. It's not like the Joker showing up on the last page. But I've really been enjoying this one, despite not being able to, not 100% knowing what it's about. It's a good, and this is one I never really expected to read, just because I'm not that familiar with Liam Sharp's work, and I don't think he's ever written before. I know he's drawn a lot of stuff for 20 years for DC, so I knew he had to be a competent artist. I had to close my windows and stop the deer from staring at me. Or at least close my blinds. Did you guys read anything this week?
No, I finished writing for the car magazine.
Oh.
And I've been the news in the past couple days is all about the Queen Elizabeth dying.
Oh yeah. I was just saying I've never paid attention to the English royal family my whole life. So it always surprises me when I see, Americans all caught up in the English royal family. I'm always like, okay, I don't get it.
Well, it's important to stay abreast of what's of the political world of our European neighbors, but over there, yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
the, the there are reasons why Queen Elizabeth is important in the in the political context, but you would not recognize them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
like
think so.
for me, it's like I do that joke that's like, didn't we have a war so we wouldn't have to worry about kings and
Yeah,
queens? But
that old joke. I
No,
love.
yeah, there's that, But other than that, it's like I've paid some attention, and I've watched a lot of the historical the documentaries or the various movies that they had and TV shows over the years. I do find some of it fascinating. So I've got into watching it and stuff like that. I don't really listen to the stuff that would be like in Entertainment Tonight. This is what the Royals are doing here or that. I could care less about that, but it's more of like what they've done historically, and then watching movies and TV shows that are based about the history that led up to this point.
You know, it's weird. I'm a big history fan. Love history. Read a lot of history. But for some reason, the history, I don't know why this is, that interests me the least is like the history of the European royals and all their wars from like, I don't know, 1500 on. It's like the history of Europe, like, 3,000 years ago, I love. Give me the Celts and the Romans and whatever else was going on 1,000 years before then, and all the movement and the Indo-Europeans, and I love that. But as soon as we get to the I don't know, the Holy Roman Empire fighting the Prussians, I'm just like, oh, I have no explanation for it. But for some reason, the last 500 years of European history. I shouldn't
well,
even say the
the
last
the
five.
fight between the Holy Roman Empire, they did not, in the 17th century, yes, but ultimately the last conflict between the Austrian Empire and the Prussians came into context uh, in a post Napoleon Europe and the rise of modern nationalism.
There's not, for some reason, I've never been interested in Napoleon. I don't think I've ever read anything on Napoleon. I don't
and
know
with
why.
and without Napoleon, the United States were already independent. The American project might have failed.
I've read two biographies of the Marquis de Lafayette. He's one of my favorite historical figures. but he wasn't a royal, really. So, but yeah. Napoleon was very instrumental in selling in the Louisiana Purchase.
Mhm.
That's he had a lot to do with America, just with that. So that's kind of interesting. Let's see, the British, they missed an opportunity of giving the Queen an Egyptian and send off with 12 mummified corgis. British royals are popular more because of the drama in their lives. It was the original. Yeah, I've seen that before. I just don't even get that. Saw a news channel announcing Charles as the new queen. It was pretty big news here. Newfoundland is still very much a British colony in a lot of ways. The new man queen. Today's so work sarcasm. Yeah, like it's just something that's always passed me by. Don't know what can't be interested in everything, can you? Can't be interested in everything. I haven't even opened this to thumb through it yet. I've been so busy looking at the cover, Millie the model. I don't know what the inside looks like. I'll have to open it later. It's square bound too, so it might break when I open it.
Which annual is that?
This is annual 7.
Okay, so I think there are still new stories in there. I think the last annual with new stories was number 9.
Twice as many pages, twice as many thrills.
And probably
Yes.
twice as many pop artists.
Yeah, that's what you bought Millie the Model for the thrills.
Nothing is synonymous with thrills like Millie the Model. I'm just glad I had an extra Mylar bag lying around because I haven't bought Mylar bags in a decade.
Okay, so let's check personal files. Millie the Model, Millie the Model, Millie the Model.
In the early 2000s, I must have bought like 5,000 Mylar bags and switched a lot of my old collection over to it and was putting new stuff in Mylar too. Then I ran out of money.
Number 9 is all reprints. Number 8. Where's number 8? Okay, number 8 is no, that's not the annual or the annuals.
Oh.
Hello, annuals. Number 8 was reprints.
What about number 7?
And number 7, where are you? Number 7? Okay, yeah. New stories. The majority are no, not the majority. There's a couple of vignettes, but they're short stories. And 16 pinups and activities spread throughout the comic.
Ah. It was tough finding a nice copy of this because the prices on eBay ranged from $10 to $400.
Jesus, why?
And the $400 ones weren't much better than this. I don't know why. This is probably a 5. It's mid-grade. But let me tell you, when you scan something, in at 1200 DPI and then go to clean it up, man, the flaws make themselves a lot more apparent when it's blown up, 600%. It's like, but the good news is Photoshop's autofill fixes a lot of the screened color. It matches the dots almost perfectly.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's like, oh, cool. You still got to do it little by little, but it does a nice job.
So you can scan in old stuff things that are printed in with old technology and turn it into 1200 DPI and larger.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Like I have. You have to make sure you use your scanner's optical resolution and not interpolated resolution. Optical resolution is what the scanner can actually do. Interpolated scans it at a higher DPI, but just uses software to invent stuff. And my big 11x17 scanner, 600 DPI is the highest it goes to. But I've got a smaller, well, it's not newer anymore. It's only 15 years old instead of 20. But the 8x10 scanner I got can go up to 1200 DPI. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to scan it at that just so I get a sharp image of all those dots in case I want to blow it up even bigger than this. Let's see if I can. But I can't find this paper. This is 11x17 double-sided matte paper. And it's like 260 grams, so it's really thick. I bought this like 5 or 6 years ago when I was doing some mini comic stuff, and it was really good for it. I went to buy it again, and they don't make it anymore. I was like, oh. Took me long enough to find it, and now they don't make it? Annoying. New comments. What are they down there? Woke. Evening Comic Crack. Didn't we decide that one to rip? No, I don't think we did.
No, this one is the slab.
This one is the slab. Hola, CK. Hello, Gus. Hello, Guru. Mylar is a new thing at my shop. Customers want Mylars, not My Lights. I like My Light 2s. My Light 1.5s are not good. My Light 2s are... This is a My Light 2, and this is the good thickness for me. 1.5s are too thin, and I find they split. If you can get My Light 2s, you're in good shape. But it's cheaper to order them directly from eGerber than the comic shop. At a comic shop, they're about twice the price. Did you do that poster yet, Jared? I got it this size so far. I'm still cleaning it up. This is my Millie the model. So I got it to 11 by 17, but I want to get it even bigger. Even in Terrence. Even bigger than that.
Finally, Millie the model's going to be big.
Yeah.
Gotta bring her back.
Every once in a while, they think about bringing Millie the model back. You can't bring Millie the model back because nobody's called Millie anymore.
There was a Millie who used to work at Marvel too. She was there for a long time. Millie, I can't remember her last name, but she was always Millie in payroll. She was the one who got everybody paid.
She was the one we gave our vouchers to.
Yeah. I think she didn't need a last name because her first name was Millie. But I think she was there from the late 60s till about 96. I have pictures of her retirement party.
Yeah, I remember the retirement party.
Yeah. Never dated a Millie. Here's a question for Wilson, since we were talking about memory before. Wilson was, he had a TikTok where he told the story of a Dr. Doom costume he had. And he said he had one picture of it. And I was like, oh, I have a few pictures of you in that costume from Halloween 96. So I sent him the pictures. Do you even remember being involved in that toilet paper mummy contest?
Matter of fact, I do.
All right.
I remember that clearly. And I remember there might be a video of that somewhere. Because I don't know if it was the memory of the event happening or I saw a video of it later on. I don't recall exactly, but yes, there was we were just wrapping up Ski in that
right. It was 3 people were doing it. Matter of fact, that was the really sad Halloween 96.
Yes.
Because it was the year Mark Grunwald died. And Mark Grunwald was kind of the office event guy. If it was a Halloween party, he especially loved Halloween. So whatever day Halloween was, they'd push the desks aside in the bullpen, bring out candy and cake and stuff, and have a Halloween party. And Mark organized all of these, Halloween games. And one of them was, he had to get 2 volunteers, or 3 volunteers. Wilson was one of the volunteers. Or actually it was 9 altogether. And one guy, Ski in this case, was the subject of it. And then 2 other guys got rolls of toilet paper and had to unroll the rolls of toilet paper around the first guy to make a mummy out of them. And it was a race between 3 teams to see who could unroll their 2 rolls of toilet paper fastest and make a mummy out of the guy. And Wilson was one of the mummy makers in his Dr. Doom costume, wrapping up Ski. I don't remember who you were wrapping her up with. I don't think the other person was in the picture that I sent you.
I believe it was Andy Ball.
Okay.
Was the other person in that.
But I was just wondering if he remembered, because I don't know if you've ever seen those pictures I took. So
I did not until
the day.
Right. The other picture was
that weird feeling of seeing pictures of yourself that you didn't know existed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought the only one that existed was the one that was that Larry Hama took.
Right.
And there's a partial costume image in one of the Marvel, the magazine that replaced Marvel Age, that Marvel Vision.
Oh, okay.
There's an interview in there with me, and I think I'm wearing the mask, but I think I'm only wearing the mask.
Okay.
In that one.
You know what? That just the one with you in the mask and the full outfit. That's one of the pictures I've over the years I've used with my students to teach them how to clean up a photo in Photoshop.
Oh, cool!
Just happens to be it's a good picture for that because it's scanned from an old negative, so there's lots of dust particles on it, and it was shot in film under fluorescent light, so they have to change the color on it. That's just a cool picture of you in a Dr. Doom costume. So it's interesting,
Mm-hmm. And it was funny too about that image is that the mask is not to that costume.
No.
No, that mask. I don't know what costume that mask is from, but Ski gave me that mask because the
Ah,
mask that's from the original costume is this rubbery mask.
wearing only the mask, Wilson? Kinky.
Yeah, yeah. And so we have the mask, and this is the really rubbery, flat nosed mask.
Okay.
But right before that party, I don't know if it was or within that week or something. Ski had the Rom costume in that picture, and he had found a Doom mask that was a harder mask, which is the one
Ah,
that is this one, which is falling apart.
needs some repair.
Yeah, I think part of me thinks that maybe I'll just paint it so it looks like it's cracked because I was thinking of putting it into a into a shadow box and
You could be
lighting
the.
the eyes like that Fantastic Four cover
I was gonna-
that Elliot created.
you could be the Secret Wars Doctor Doom too. It doesn't. Isn't his armor battered on one of the covers?
It is battered on the cover, yes.
Gore Vidal never dated Millie. Gore finding the rare missed name on his list. Winnie the Pooh wore a shirt and no pants. Gus, that honey bear, was radical. And his mask.
Oh,
Let's
and
do
you had shared that image of the paper plate recently that had
Oh,
a
yes.
drawing on it that I did. I do not recall that drawing at all. I mean, I recall drawing on paper plates. That was a thing that we did just because that
I don't remember why we did it.
I don't remember why, but there were a bunch of paper plates, and I remember a lot of people were drawing on them. I
Right.
just found it weird that I picked Omac
Yeah.
out of all characters. Because as I'm looking at it, it took me a while to go, that is my signature.
Yeah.
That is my drawing. Why would I draw that character out of everyone? So I don't know. Maybe it was called for.
And
I don't remember I remember we did one day. Everyone was drawing on paper plates. I don't remember why.
Since they don't know what we're talking about, I'll tell them. Recently, I found and posted so Wilson could see it in my art collection from Marvel, about a 6-inch paper plate that that Wilson drew an OMAC head on and signed. I think you dated it too. What was it? 2001, 2002? I can't remember.
I think so.
A long
I
time
didn't take
ago.
a copy of it, but I think so.
And he drew it and gave it to me. I can't remember what. One day in the bullpen, instead of doing sketch, for some reason it came up as a joke. I don't remember how. I don't remember why. Instead of doing sketch cards, we were doing sketch plates. We must have been having a party for something, and there were little 6-inch paper plates around. And I ended up with that one from Wilson, and I've kept it all these years. Found it in a box recently and said, posted.
Tales of Marvel's Fourth Floor.
Tales
The paper plate art.
All right. Let's do a Rip, Read, and Slab. This is an early 70s DC 100-page giant, Rip, Read, and Slab. We have got Superboy 205, Justice League of America 114, and World's Finest Comics. Oh, I don't have the number after it. Must have got cut off somehow. Whatever number World Finest from August 1974. Lots of stuff happening on those covers. Boxes galore. Looks like we got Dead Man, Superman and Batman and Metamorpho. Must upgrade.
And now you see where Marvel covers at the time were better.
What was better?
Marvel covers.
Oh, yeah. We got Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, and regular Superboy. Yeah, can't say any of these covers blow me away.
Not at all. I'm fascinated how the Superboy cover and the World's Finest cover are basically the same type. There's 3 panels.
Oh, yeah.
You know, 1 large, 2 small, and you don't know a single thing that's going on. And the Justice League of America is the same kind of first panel as the Superboy one because there's a gun shooting from outside the panel. It's amazing how bad they all are.
And there's the JSA down the bottom of the Justice League one. Comic Craft is unsure. He's going to rip Superboy, Reels Force, Slat. He sounds unsure that that's what he's going to do, but that's what he's going to do.
I'm going to read Justice League of America.
It's a
That's
tough
the one.
one.
I need to know what's going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
Dead Man wins out, of course.
I'll slab World's Finest. And then I'm going to have to rip up Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do the same. At least I want to know what kind of gun can stop Superman. So it makes sense to read that. But the World's Finest as the least worst art. So
I think.
Besides, that's Deadman in there.
Yeah, there's Deadman. Yeah. That's what won it out for Comic Crack. He's reading World's Finest with Deadman. Rip World's Finest, slab JLA, and read Superboy and the Legion.
No, that is a very boring Superboy and the Legion cover. It
doesn't the only thing that would make that cover better if it was dolphins shooting at them.
Yes,
that would have saved it.
I think I'm gonna read the Superboy and the Legion superheroes just because I think I'm more of a Legion fan than the others. I'm not telling you I'm a Legion fan, but I might be more of a Legion fan than a JLA and World's Finest fan. Let's see what we got here. Read World's Finest, slab Superboy, rip Justice, Dolphin Justice, and have them shooting the dolphin. Those covers are all terrible, though.
I agree with Wilson. If we put the dolphin shooting at the Legion, or maybe in World's Finest, instead of grabbing Metamorpho's face, Superman can grab a dolphin.
Metamorpho is, I think. I do like that doorknob ally, though. I think I'm gonna read Legion, slab World's Finest, and rip up Justice League. And I'm going to put the dolphin where Metamorpho is. So Superman is reaching for a dolphin doorknob. These decorative dolphin doorknobs are terrific, Batman. You know the other place I'd like to put the dolphin? Right in the middle of the Justice League of America logo. It'll say Justice, Dolphin, right? The dolphin going across right where League is, and then America. I think I can work that into the logo.
Or replace all the Justice Society members with dolphins in those costumes.
That's just what I was doing, Comic Craft. Going to turn Deadman into the dolphin doorknob. Oh no, he's turning Deadman down there. Pardon me, I was doing Metamorpho. I got confused. So he's turning Deadman down on that bottom, the stretchy Deadman. He's turning into a dolphin. But by this, you can see why in the mid-70s I was a Marvel guy and not a DC guy. This was DC's offering. Nothing about this appeals to me.
The only thing that appeals to me is the fact that it's 100 pages. That's it. And it's but the covers are just so bad.
Friends of mine, like my friend John and my friend Bunch, love these 100-pagers, and they loved them. They loved a glimpse at the Golden Age DC. Bunch always says the reason he knows anything about Golden Age DC was from these 100-page giant reprints, which all have Golden Age stories in them too. But when I read the Golden Age DC stories, it was just worse DC comics than the 1970s DC to me. To me as a kid. I think that Patrick Duffy, Terrence, as the man from Atlantis, that was Patrick. Oh, the dolphin. Dead Man. A nice themed rip, read, and tear. Oop, let me remove. I didn't remove it from here. Let's see what else. We get a chance to use the word penultimate again. I like the covers, but I agree Marvel's were bad. I don't even like those covers. I mean, now I'm okay with them, but as a kid, Once in Future issue 29 with issue 30 being the last one. So some terrific fun art by Dan Mora and Tamra Bonvillain on colors. The fantasy world of all the English legends have taken over England and they're trying to stop it. They got one more issue to stop it, and it's been I've been enjoying for 29 issues so far. It's been a seat of your pants excitement for the last 10 issues or so, because like for the first 15 issues they were trying to stop this from happening, and then it happened, and then they were just running for their lives for a few issues, and then they were trying to figure out what to do. Once in Future is great. I'm reading the TPBs. Yeah, 62 Lefty Blues. It's a fun book. Who's right? Kieran Gillen is writing it with Dan Mora on art and Tamra Bonvillain on colors. They make a nice team. And I've liked a bunch of stuff that Kieran Gillen has written. I think he's a pretty solid writer. He wrote, what is that? Divine... Ooh, what was that? The blood and the divine. How come I can't remember the phrase? The sacred and the divine? No. Whatever that was. The one about the gods coming back to London. That was a good one. He read that. He wrote that Peter Cannon story, which was my favorite commentary on Watchmen comic I ever read. You've probably never heard of it. It's came out like 3 years ago now. It's called Peter Cannon. Kieran Gillen was the writer. Oh, I forget who the artist was, but I'm buying one of his series now. But it was kind of, I think it was 5 issues. But Peter Cannon was the one, and Uber. Oh, that's right. That's my favorite of his books. Kieran Gillen is writing Uber. That one's terrific. Comic Crack, you missed earlier when Jared was talking about Asterius Polyp. Yeah, in memory. And like I said, good stuff that Peter Cannon was the guy who in Watchmen, what was that guy's name?
Ozymandias.
As Ozymandias was based on. I'm really tired brained tonight. So they had Peter Snaregard or something like that was the artist. I forget. SNJE Guard or something like that. And I think Peter was his first name.
Snebjerg.
That's
Okay.
closer than I'm going to get. Nice Lefty. Was a hell of a book, yeah. But so Peter Cannon in another dimension discovers Peter Cannon. This is the conceit of the story. What's his name? Ozymandias' plan didn't work. Mm-hmm. So he discovered alternate universes and kept going to alternate universes to try and get his plan to work. And he kept ending up destroying alternate universes because his plan didn't work. So this Peter Cannon ended up trying to stop him. And the overall kind of meta story was kind of about stop doing Watchmen sequels and move on.
That's brilliant.
But it was like the best Watchmen sequel commentary that I ever saw. If you ever get a chance to check it out, do that. It was good stuff. And Comic Crack, I was talking about how I read Asterius Polyp twice, like 10 or 12 years apart. And the first time I read it, I was younger than Asterius Polyp. And I thought it was, okay. I liked it well enough, but I didn't think it was great. I read it 10 or 12 years later, and I was older than Asterius Polyp. And then I thought, the second time through, I thought it was great. Matter of fact, I read it that year. I think I read it 3 times. That's how much I enjoyed reading it. And it was like I'm like, I think my age had something to do with it too. Because you never know.
So I haven't read anything this week, but I had been finding some stuff.
The Wicked and the Divine was the book I was trying to remember, by the way. There it is right there. That I, for some reason, wasn't it? That's another Kieran Gillen book that's good. Okay, Wilson.
And I happened to share this on Facebook. It's like I found an old script from a comic book or manga called Alien 9.
Yeah.
And it's just wow, because this is something that I lettered years ago. I couldn't even tell you the year off the top of my head, but it had to be still back in the 1900s, if not the very early 2000s. And it is basically, this is the script to the book, Alien 9. It was published by Central Park Media. It was one of the very first things that I lettered. This was lettered for Mike Lackey, who I basically ran into at a party, and I was trying to get some coloring work. And so I gave him my card, and he called me in, and it was like, "Oh, can you do lettering?" I was like, "Sure." Then I went to the Marvel bullpen, and I asked Dave Sharp to teach me how to letter. And sometimes you got to take the job before you actually.
Right. I tell my students that too. So they can ask if you can do the job, say yes,
and then figure out how to do it. And so it's like, it's funny to see that here it is, the whole script typed out. So I don't even know if I ever actually got a digital copy of it.
Oh, you may have had to type that all yourself?
I may have had to type it. I'm going to think not. I think that perhaps what happened was, since I was working back then on one screen, I probably printed it out. So I could look over it as I'm doing it, because then I'm switching. Since now I work with two screens, I could keep the script on one screen and I can do the lettering on the other screen, so I could copy and paste easily. Back then it was obviously one screen, and I would be switching through whatever program. And it was just interesting to look at, and it's like, oh yeah, this is how we got them. And then remembering how we also got the comic books, because now everything's digital and things are sent in. There was a while that I was getting them on CDs, but before we even got them from CDs, we had to take the original comic book, the Japanese comic book, cut the pages out, scan them at 1200 DPI. It's already black and white anyway. 1200 DPI, and then erase the Japanese text, and then letter it in English.
Wow.
And then a few years later, we would get it on a CD, where we would get the artwork that way. But over the years, there were different ways of getting it. And one of the tricks to cutting the original Japanese comic was we could put it in the microwave for a few minutes or a few seconds.
Soften the glue?
And soften the glue.
Wow.
And it made it easier to take apart the original comic book.
Wow. Tricks for tearing apart a book. Put it in the microwave to soften the glue.
And soften the glue. Because, again, that's the way we did it. And it's funny because it paid well back then. But as the technology got easier to get the files, the page rate started going down because it wasn't doing as much work. So it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, the work still kind of matched, because at the end, you're just getting paid for lettering. But before that, you got extra for doing that little bit of extra work. And it was just funny. It's like, oh, just running into an old script. Yeah. Don't know why I hung on to it, except for once I was done, I put it in a box somewhere, and it got put away.
Speaking of memories, I don't remember. I was talking to Randy Gentile this week, who might be showing up on this show sometime in the next few weeks. I don't know when. But he was you were there with Randy, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was a letterer at Marvel. He was a bullpenner and a bullpen letterer. And he was telling me the story of him being an intern at Marvel. And I was always the guy who taught the new people the job. So if some new guy came on staff or an intern, they wanted to know the job, they'd send them over to me, and I'd show them how to do the job. So this is the digital age when I was showing him how to do the job on the computer, paste up the, and Randy was like, oh my God. He was like, I was so nervous. He's like, I'm an intern. They're going to kick me out if I can't do the job. Here we go. And he said, I was teaching him how to do it. And he's like, you were so casual. It was like, I was just over there doing it. He's like, you were barely even looking at the screen. You were talking to people. He's like, you may have even been eating something, showing me how to do the, he's like, you just didn't even care about getting the job right because you'd done it 1,000 times. He's like, and I was just like, oh my God, I have to pay attention to this. I have to get this right. And I was just like, here I go for the 10,000th time doing a page. So it's funny to hear stories about yourself from someone else's perspective.
There's
Drop the gun, take the cannoli.
You remember how they would have Spider-Man giving tours?
Yes.
So one of the back in Marvel, they would be every Friday. I believe it was a Friday. There would be a tour group that would come around because at that time, a teacher could contact Marvel and schedule a time to bring students. And Spider-Man would give a tour of what's going on at Marvel. And it was one year that I actually gave the tour because Spider-Man couldn't make it that day or something like that. So he walked me through what the tour was. And one of the stops is to stop by my office, Art Returns, and I would show some of the original artwork. What I would do is actually take the artwork and bring it out to the bullpen and show people there because it was easier to show a crowd of people stuff. And it wasn't until years later that I found out that Julio was a kid on that tour once.
Ah, Julio worked in the bullpen with us.
And Julio eventually worked in the bullpen. But Julio had been one of the kids on the tour. And Julio was a kid when he showed up at Marvel to work at Marvel.
Julio was someone we worked with at Marvel in the bullpen, and he was 17 when he started.
Mm-hmm. So about a year before he started, he was on that tour. And he was telling me about it, and it's like, oh yeah, you were on the tour, you talked about this and that, and it's like that's just wild to have, just to have something like that from, like as you mentioned, someone else's point of view. And it's just wild things like that.
The Spider-Man costume reminded me of probably around 1990 that my friend Ed Murr, he was a skinny guy then, when he was from when he was 18 till 28 or whatever. He was a real he was built like Peter Parker, a skinny nerdy kid. So a couple of times because they used to hire an actor to play Spider-Man to do the tour. But in those days, they didn't always. So they asked Ed if he wanted to do the tour as Spider-Man. He was a fellow bullpenner. And they gave him the Spider-Man costume to dress up in and jump out and surprise the kids. And he used to jump up on he almost slipped and killed himself too, on the file cabinet. And though one day they eventually told him he had to buy a cup because he's in a spandex suit with his package kind of hanging out. And he had a kind of big package. So there's this one picture. I wish I had a copy of it. I'm going to have to track it down. I don't know. Maybe Bunch has a copy of it. And it's kind of him jumped up, crouching on the on a file cabinet that's maybe 2 feet off the floor. And you can't even see, I don't think you can see all of him. It was kind of looking down. And you just see like a little kid about, 6, 8 years old, staring at his crotch like this. And it's just the funniest picture you've ever seen. I'll have to find that one. But yeah, they told him he had to wear a cup. I don't think he ever did Spider-Man after that, though. They started hiring professional actors to give the tour. But I used to be the one, what would happen was people would hear, a lot of the bullpenners hated the tour. I never cared. I was fine with it. It broke up my day. So it's like everybody would hear, there's a tour coming. There's a tour coming. And Spider-Man would come out with a group of high schoolers and younger, and everybody would be like cockroaches with the light turned on. Everybody would just flee. And Spider-Man would like be desperately looking around for somebody to help him out, to show him what we did in the bullpen, which is all you had to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I always like waved him over. He was always like happy to see me. He was like, oh. And he'd always come by out of costume after, and he's like, "Oh, thanks." I was like, come on over." Matter of fact, there's it's posted on my Facebook somewhere. There's a picture of me. I think it's one of the earliest pictures of me at Marvel. It's from 90 or 91. Someone took it for me, and it was of me surrounded by 20 kids, showing them what they do on my desk. I was like, I never minded the tour at all. Some people, like I said, people would flee.
Yeah, I didn't mind it. Having an audience, it was fun.
Yeah,
and the other thing is that because I always wanted, because I knew about the tour, and I always wanted to get on a tour, and I had a friend who was a teacher, and she always said, I'll call up and get you on the tour. It never happened. But it's like, but I knew about it, or I knew that it happened, and again, back then, you didn't really know that you could just look up Marvel in the phone book, and call up and speak to somebody.
Right.
Because who knew that? Who knew you can actually do that? And it's like, I could have called up myself and probably got a tour. Because they didn't, because the tours also was like different groups too. So it wasn't necessarily just one class. It could have been 2 or 3 classes, and then 1 or 2 people who might have been related to someone that got added to the tour and stuff like that.
There's like, you want to be on the tour? Show up on Tuesdays at 10 o'clock or something like that. It would be, and they'd just be added to the group. Yep. But I never understood. I was just like, it breaks up my day. I'm okay. Imagine Paolo, if in the middle of your work day, all of a sudden you got a 20-minute break to chat with some people who happen to be walking through. I'm okay with that.
We're completely excited on what you do.
Yeah, completely excited about your boring job.
Mm-hmm.
No, if I had to, I mean, my job was never but then again, so isn't yours. I mean,
no, it wasn't exciting, the job.
Yeah, I guess in your case, people expect you to have Spider-Man running around, so that's why you hired the guy.
Or he's excitedly be drawing Spider-Man before their eyes. That's not how it works. But at least we got to show them original art pages, and they can ooh and ah at it.
Yeah.
I think I remember seeing school field trips in the building, but they didn't walk by our floor. Which, if they did, I mean, we would ignore them, just kids walking through. And we just keep doing what we were doing, which was writing. Sometimes maybe we'd take a call.
Yeah, it was different than like a tour at Disney, which I've read about, where they look through the glass at you.
Yeah, that sounds like you're in a fishbowl at that point.
Right. And this one, they came around you and wanted to talk.
Right. Can you tell me what's going on in Spider-Man next month? No.
Yeah, I went out to a local art school to do a talk on what kind of art jobs you can get in architecture. I'd like to do that talk because I don't know.
I did get invited once to go to my old college and explain what I did. So basically, I took copies of the magazines I worked on, and there was one guy who was like all excited. I guess he liked cars as well. He asked me, do I need some special? Do I need to be some specialized knowledge to work? Nah.
I asked what it paid, and I said better than McDonald's.
So, what should I do if I want to become a journalist? Don't become a journalist. Go into advertising. Yeah. Go into public relations. Don't go into journalism.
I like this. Here's the new mind management bootleg. and every issue has been a new artist. And this month it's David Rubin, who I have never heard of, but I enjoyed his art, especially this cover. Though I don't know why there's a white band at the top and the bottom. I'm like, was that a mistake? Did you draw the cover at the wrong proportion?
It looks like they didn't trim the book.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. I saw
like that
and
back cover.
blam, that's a blow up of one of the panels in it. And the art is pretty cool. Let me see if I can get a good page. Here's the guy named Chuck who is in a Charlie Brown sweater. Like, the art itself is pretty cool. But what I also like about this, Rubin did a book called Ether. Okay, I've heard of that book. Two dolphins too. He's two dolphins. But what I especially like about this book is one of the reasons this is published by Dark Horse, but it's Flux House, which is Matt Kint's imprint at Dark Horse. But one of the reasons I haven't been buying Dark Horse comics much is I don't like their physical comics. They're always self-covered. There's like, I've found a lot of Dark Horse comics, I don't even know, the last 10 years, are like, they're just publishing them so they can publish the trade. There's no value to the individual issue to me as a reader. It feels cheap. It feels crappy. There's no like content besides the 20 pages that's in it. There's no editorial content. There's nothing that tells you anything about the comic or the creators. And I've just kind of grown to dislike physical Dark Horse comics. It's like when I buy individual issues, I want there to be a value to them. And I don't want them to just break up a trade paperback into 6 issues and print it. That's not what I'm looking for in my individual comic experience. And I think Matt Kint knows that because these ones have a cardstock cover. So that feels good. And then in the back, it's here is a, besides the, the pages of the comic, it's got, I don't know. Oh, here's a special sneak peek at the screenplay for Mind Management Bootleg, the television show. And it's got a little script, and each issue has had a little script in the back, which I've enjoyed. I almost never read because it's not a script for the comic. It just kind of adds more stuff to the comic. There's more information in it about what's going on in the comic, and it's pretty well done. And then in the very back, there's looks like a Matt Kint done mini comic about characters. So this is the one Dark Horse book that makes me want to buy it in single issues. If all Dark Horse books were packaged like this, I'd be buying more Dark Horse books. Matter of fact, there was just one Dark Horse book. I can't remember what it was. That sounded kind of interesting to me. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get that one. And then I was like, nah, I don't want to pay. I don't want to get a Dark Horse book. So I just passed on it without even seeing it. And if I see it in the, a shelf copy and pick it up and like it, maybe I'll buy it. But so many shelf copies of Dark Horse books I picked up, flipped through them. They're flimsy. There's nothing in them but the 20 pages and then a bunch of ads. And I just go, I'll read the trade paperback, which means I'll never read it.
Right. So I guess that other imprint is probably packaging that whole thing up together for them, and they're just slapping their logo on it.
Yeah, I imagine Matt Kint is saying, I want that paper stock. I don't want a self-covered comic. Because his other stuff is like that. But yeah, Mind Management Bootleg has been not as good as Mind Management was, but so far it's pretty cool.
Is Dark Horse still relevant nowadays?
Well, they've got they're relevant with me. which probably means they're not that relevant. Because, like I say, if you're catering to my taste, you're in trouble.
Well,
Because
Dark Horse used to have some things that justified their interest in other things, but now they don't have the first, and they can't afford the second.
Dark Horse used to have a lot of licensed comics that drove the engine, I think. Matter of fact, the period where Dark Horse had the most licensed comics is when I was least interested in them. But that's my taste. They have what's it? Shaolin Cowboy is the other Dark Horse book I buy. 62. I picked up Dark Horse own and artist Robert Simon. It's a beautiful artwork, lots of 2-page spreads. What is it? Yeah, Dark Horse. Yeah, I don't know that one.
I couldn't even tell you what Dark Horse was publishing now. I did read them because they had a lot of the licensed stuff, especially the Godzilla stuff, Gamera.
Right.
They had the monster stuff. I know I picked up Predator, the Alien stuff. Those are the things that I did like. But I also did like when they started their superhero universe, because they were doing $1 comic books. And I thought that was a really cool thing at the time. And then that was it. Even Dark Horse Presents was a lot of fun because you got a little bit of everything. I know I was reading Concrete, I believe, was published through them, and the early Hellboy was published through them.
I read a lot of Concrete. I read all of the Concrete. But you're right. Hellboy is one of their big series. But for some reason, I've never been into Hellboy.
Oh, come on. Hellboy is probably the thing that's holding up Dark Horse at this time. Even the rest of the things that they had, like Frank Miller stuff, Concrete. I mean, they don't even use their own pre-superhero characters like the Mask.
Mm-hmm.
But what would happen if they put out a Mask comic? And every once in a while, they get the rights to something. But
Dark Horse just got bought by a
video game company.
Right? Were they a French video game company even?
Yeah.
Okay. I forgot about that until this moment. I know we discussed it sometime this summer.
Yeah, but after that, nobody talks about them. Nobody says the hot new comic coming from Dark Horse, or the property that's been bubbling under for the last year, and now the trade paperbacks are flying off the shelves. The personalities that Dark Horse is publishing, nobody does that. Nobody's doing that, and so.
Yeah, put out a Cali hardcase oversized book this week. I guess Dark Horse. I don't know that. Written by Daniel Freeman and artist Robert Samalin. I'll have to look that one up. Sure, Dark Horse is relevant because of the Umbrella Academy TV show. I've forgotten about that one. The Umbrella Academy too. I'm slowly getting into old Concrete comics. Those are good. They were new Concrete comics when I bought them. They're still on my shelf, but I don't think Paul Chadwick does much these days either. I haven't seen anything by him in a while.
No,
but he was one of my favorites in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Dark
Horse. Yeah, I've not seen. Like I said, getting Shaolin Cowboy is one that I'm in. It's funny. This is the first Shaolin. I think there's only the fourth Shaolin Cowboy series, but the first one I'm picking up in the issues because I'm enjoying looking at the art in the issues. That, and I got 2 Shaolin Cowboys ago. I bought the oversized collected edition from Dark Horse, and just the covers weren't very good on it. They're just this ugly cardboard. But the insides were all right. Huh. I'm trade waiting on a lot of stuff these days. For me, trade waiting usually means I never buy it. But not always. As I showed before, I finally got these. I have all the original issues, and I want the oversized ones. But I settled for the Buddy Bradley, Buddy Does Jersey, and Buddy Does Seattle because they were so darn cheap. They're smaller than regular comics. I'd rather they were bigger than regular comics. But you know what? I may as well have some sort of collected edition on my shelf. And then I could buy Millie the Model, too. And that terrible Great Gatsby adaptation. What do we got here? Jared, the cover of Callie is a back view of the main character while the back cover is a front view of her. It lines up perfectly. I love high concept covers. I'll have to check that out. I'm a sucker for a gimmick cover too, just like everyone else. Let's see what else do we got here. Time Before Time. They got a new artist. What's his name? Eric Zawadski, Zawadski. Everybody's back. The writers are Rory McConville and Declan Shavely. And I've been in this is issue 16. I'm still liking it. Our time travel gangsters. I think the story is finally coming in, but some pretty decent artwork. The original guy was this Mike Mignola-esque guy. Now this guy looks a little European, with some Japanese thrown in too. But Time Before Time is another solid read. I've liked this one from the beginning, and it's held up for me. Not the greatest cover in the world. Oh, and speaking of covers, when I was doing my pull list, this is Image Anthology issue 5. And I couldn't figure out what this cover image was. I was like, at first I thought it was issue 6. Because it's a 5. This purple across here so blends in with the back that I didn't know that was a 5. I thought it was a 6. And I'm looking at it going,
B.
Yeah, or a B. I'm like, I can't figure out what that image. I'm like, I couldn't figure it out. It wasn't until I was finished making my video and my YouTube video, and I usually make an Instagram video after that, just a minute long one. And I looked at it through the iPad that it popped out at me that it was a 5. I'm like, if you watch my YouTube video, I'm stumbling around going, is this issue 6? Is this issue 5? Like, I can't even tell what this cover is. It's a 5. I'm like, whoever colored this cover did not do a good job. Shouldn't have gone with a low contrast violet. But an anthology issue was pretty good. What annoyed me about this issue was there was 2 previews in it. Instead of being a story made up for this, it was like, this story continues in his series, blah, blah, blah. And I think they've done that a couple of times. And they're always the worst ones. They're always like, the first 6 pages from some story. And those are the ones they print in the back of comics, when they don't want to put ads in. They print like 6 pages from some comic coming up. And it reads like 6 pages from some comic coming up. So the rest of the stories are genuine anthology stories, and 2 of them weren't. And that kind of annoyed me a little. But, oh well. That's the nature of anthologies. But so far, it's just been good and not great. I can't think of one standout story, but they're all okay stories.
And do they continue in the other issues of those anthology books?
Yes.
Or that's just
Some
one
of them
shot?
some of them are going through the whole 12 issues. Some of them are 4 or 5 parts. Some of them are 1 or 2 parts. Some of them are just ads. They're previews for. I had those Seattle Heat comics in the 90s. That's my youth. Oh, that's terrific stuff. Those back when hate was cool, as Peter Bagg calls them. I like them all the way through. But when it was kind of, the unofficial comic of the grunge scene, it was really good stuff. But like I said, I like it all the way. Bagg, Close, Tomine, and Hernandez were doing art for those Sub Pop and other alternative rock bands. Yeah, they were all over the place in the late 80s and 90s. Coop is doing a style like that now. Oh, okay. Like the What is that? The one I just showed, the Time Before Time one. That's interesting. I haven't seen Coop's stuff in a while. He's another one of those Fantagraphics guys who I bought a little of, but never a lot. Peter Cooper. Coop. Not the Peter Cooper who used to work in the Marvel bullpen. That was a different one.
Right. That's a different one altogether. Because it could have been, because the comic industry is tiny.
Yeah, you never know. Let's do one last read rip. Let's go back in time to June 1959, Postcode Sci-Fi. There we go. Mysteries of the Unexplained World 14, Adventures into the Unknown 10, and Tales of the Unexpected number 40. DC, I think that's AC, and I don't know who the first one is. I don't remember.
The first one's not a Charlton, is it? No.
It might be a Charlton. I think I recognize that logo. I think you're right there.
In ACG, that was Donenfeld's son-in-law?
Yeah.
I think so. You'll probably, if you look for it, you'll find an IND distributor logo somewhere on the cover.
Is that a Ditko cover for the Tales of the Unexpected?
I don't know.
No, Ditko would not be working for DC at the time.
Yeah, it doesn't quite look like Ditko to me, but I can see
Ditko
why.
Feet.
There you go. That's more like it. I love all those covers. then we're gonna make you rip one up. Mm-hmm. Rip Unexpected, Read Unknown, and Slab Unexplored Worlds. Well, being a Charlton comic, Unexplored Worlds might rip itself. As you try to read it.
I think I would want to read Mysteries of the Unexplored Worlds. I would slab Tales of the Unexpected. And I'll rip Adventures into the Unknown. And I'm only just going by cover art.
Yeah. That's all. Slab Unknown, Read Unexpected, and Rip Worlds. Okay. I'm thinking about Slab and Unknown. That may be the comic the cover that jumps out at me most, but it's a little too paperback book for me at the same time. It doesn't really say comic book.
Yeah, it has that gold key who is it? Magnus Robot Fighter?
Yeah.
Has that
it actually reminds me of, I can't remember. What do we got here? Slab Unexpected, Read Unknown, and Rip Unexplored. Okay, another version.
So I'm going to Slab Unexplored, Read Unknown, and Rip Unexpected.
What was that?
Slab Unexplored, Read Unknown, Rip Unexpected.
Okay. Now, I was just thinking the Unknown reminds me of the Marber Grid. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Look it up, Marber. I think it was the 60s. The Marber is the name of the designer. It may have been Penguin. Penguin Books said to its designer, come up with a design that we can use for all our paperback books, that we can just plug in illustrations, logos, da-da-da. And this guy, Marber, came up with this really elegant design based on compositional principles that they ended up using, and it became so that design became, and then Penguin would just hand out that design.
I could see it. Yeah, Penguin was using it, and I could see that being.
But there's one thing that ruins that composition in a late 50s, early 60s comic book. It's that damn comic.
Oh yeah,
comic seal.
Yeah, that comic really wrecks it.
Especially when it was that big.
Was there a Tales of the Unexpected TV show in the 70s? Or was it the late 60s? I can't remember. I think so. It was like a Twilight Zone type show. Let's see. I think you know what? In the end, I may like that Unexplored Worlds cover best. I may slab that, even though it's got a lot of type on it. I may slab that one.
Yeah,
Tear up Unexpected and read Unknown.
I checked it. It's a Charles Nicholas cover.
Charles Nicholas?
Yeah.
I don't even think I know that name.
Actually, there have been about 3 people using the Charles Nicholas name. Only 2 of them were actually called Charles Nicholas.
Ah. By the way, who was it that I was discussing with someone? I couldn't remember it. Was Jesse Marsh the guy who painted the Gold Key logo, Gold Key cover? Was it? Yeah. Which it was Gold Key that had all the painted covers, right?
Yeah.
Was Jesse Marsh the name of the artist? Do you guys remember it all?
I do not recall the name of the artist. And I know I looked it up once because I was very interested for a short time in those Gold Key covers because I was looking them up after reading the Valiant books where a lot of them came from. And because I know it was Russ, I think Manning drawing.
Yeah, he
was drawing the inside, and I really liked his interior artwork. But then when I went to look for who did the covers, I couldn't find it at the time.
I only bring it up because I was having a conversation about them today, and I couldn't remember, and I didn't go look it up. So I was like, I think that was the guy's name.
The cover to Adventures into the Unknown was by Ogden Whitney.
Oh, Ogden Whitney.
Okay.
Not his strongest work, I don't think. He's the guy who did Herbie, right?
No. Oh, who did Herbie?
I think that was Ogden Whitney.
Was it? Yeah, it was Ogden Whitney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tales of the Unexpected was a British show from 79 to 88. Oh, okay. Must be thinking of a different one then.
Well, the story that cover portrait was drawn by Paul Ryman.
Paul Ryman. Wow.
Yeah, Paul Ryman. There's a John Buscema here. Another Paul Ryman. Al Wenzel.
Didn't Ogden Whitney do some work for Marvel in the 60s briefly?
Yeah, the Westerns.
Okay.
I think we had artwork from him.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but by the time they were producing the last Western, so Larry Lieber was no longer working on them. There's a few Ogden Whitneys and early Herb Trimpe's. And some Danny O'Neill writing in there.
Ogden Whitney. Always a funny name. Odd funny, not ha-ha funny.
Yeah, it's a unique name.
Yeah. Ogden. I wonder where that even comes from.
That's his middle name.
That's his middle name? He was using his middle name as his...
Yes, John Ogden Whitney.
That's weird that you got John and you use Ogden. I guess he really didn't want to be known in his personal life that he was working in comics. That could have been it.
The American ACG's editor, Richard Hughes, he wrote every story that they published, and he signed everything with pen names like Shane O'Shea, Brad Everson, Kermit Lundgren, and Derek Rutherford.
Wow. Oh, but I don't think I mentioned it on here. It was a few weeks ago I found... I read Mark Evanire's blog whenever he posts. It's an enjoyable one. And he mentioned something about in the past he had posted... The subject of Gold Key, Western, who's the third one? Dell came up. And he said, I posted a long blog about it years ago. Here's the link. So yeah, Mark Evanier actually explains the business relationships between those three companies that everybody always gets confused. So if you ever want to read a piece about exactly how, because I can't remember what it was something like one was a publisher, one was a packager, and another was a publisher on a, like, I think Western was the publisher, and they'd say to Dell, give us some comics to publish, but Western would decide which comics to. I'd have to read the blog again. I don't know. It's a real confusing relationship, but if you ever want to read about it, Mark Evanier's got a good history blog on it.
I'll have to look for it.
Yeah.
Western produced everything. Dell would use their logo because they had they were their own distributor. They had access to the market.
Mark Evanier explained it better than I've heard it explained. It's not even as simple as that at times. But like I said, check it out. It's a fun little read. He's generally a good writer.
The blog you're talking about, is that the News From Me blog he does?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. So it's
probably just put Dell Gold
newsfromme.com.
Key. Yeah. Dell, Mark Evanier, me. So probably Dell Gold Key, just put in the search box and see what you can find out. Western. And look at it, it's a nice, that's a nice, I was like, oh, I can't remember, I can't understand the relationship now because I'm so tired. But when I read it, I understood it. It made perfect sense as I was reading it.
Okay, yeah. So Dell decided what to publish, and Western decided what were the stories and where it would be printed. Which is an interest. Which is that one's not normal. I mean, farming out the production and just buying whatever.
Then I think and it's like normal. Western made all the editorial decisions about what to publish, and then they farmed it out. But then I think later on, Dell started publishing its own stuff or something it goes into. It's like they were doing both. They were publishing for
Yeah, and I guess that when it comes to Western, there would come a point, unless they were working on licensed properties, they would pretty much decide whatever else they would publish, and because at a certain point, like there were filler strips and stuff like Brothers of the Spear and Tarzan, and those would be generated by Western, and I guess they would have to fill those pages because let's say I need you to print 50 Tarzan. That would say I need you to print 50 Tarzan story pages a month. Okay, they would do those 50, but you divide them by 2 or 3 comics, and then the numbers don't add up. So okay, let's create a 4 or 5 page filler strip in the same theme that we can use to fill up the rest of the issue. I guess those would be Western.
Yeah. It's weird. It's a weird relationship.
I mean, there's no reason for Dell to order something called John of the Kalahari, which was one of the Tarzan fillers.
Yeah. Oh, no. You know, it's funny that I ordered today. I can't even remember the name of it. There was an announcement today that, oh, by the way, Bad Idea just announced on Thursday they're getting a whole bunch of new books. So I had to get some stuff ready for their announcement. But Bad Idea will be back the rest of this year and next year publishing books. So I'll be doing the production for them. Cool. But besides that, Image announced a book by the Ice Cream Man guys. What are their name? Something Prince and I Buy Ice Cream Man. So I should know their names, but I can't remember them. Maxwell Prince. I don't remember if he's the writer or the artist. And then there's a writer. They announced a book called Art Brute was the name of it. 2 words, ARTBRUT. And they're like, oh, this is going to be a remastered, redone, special, brought back to you version. Da, da, da. And I was like, brought back to me from where? So I kept reading it, and it turns out it was like a comic they did in 2017 that had a different name. I can't remember what the other name was, but they wanted to name it Art Brute back then, but weren't allowed to. Probably because they were new then and didn't have a hit under their belt. So they've kind of redone the art, and they're putting it out as a new. First, it's going to be a new comic, I guess, as monthly issue. I think the original was like 120 pages, so I imagine it's going to be like a 3 or 4 issue series. But I was like, well, let me see if I can find the original series on eBay, whatever its name is. Hold on, let me see if I can get you the original series name. I probably have it here in my email. Nope, it's. Let me check. But I was like, let me see if I can find the original one. I may as well read that before I read the new and improved version. Huh? There it is. The Electric Sublime. So in 2017, it was released as the Electric Sublime, and I just got it shipped for $7.65. I was like, sure, why not? $8 for a trade paperback. I was like, so I'll be having that coming this week sometime. I'm like, before I spend money on the new improved version, and I was like, new improved version, and it was weird to me that they were releasing it as comic books and not as a graphic novel first, because it's done, or minus whatever improvements they added to it. So I found that funny that they're doing that. But for $8, I'll read the old one. Remember an interview with Mark Evanier in Comics Journal years ago about Black Hawk. Never so often there's interest about doing it into a movie, and DC will restart the comic, and it never happens. Yeah. Mark Evanier wrote some Black Hawk with Dan Spiegel drawing it in the early 80s. Those are some solid comics. Yeah, the movie never happens, right. Dan Spiegel and Mark Evanier also did a comic in the 80s, an indie comic called Crossfire. And in the back, before the days of blogs, Mark Evanier started writing little essays about his Hollywood experiences, because he's a writer out in Hollywood too. And I remember looking forward to those more than the Crossfire book, which I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. But I really enjoyed his writing in the back of Crossfire too. Because in those days, you didn't have much insight into the Hollywood experience. There was no internet with everybody posting everything.
It kind of reminds me of Peter David used to have a column.
Yeah.
In was it CBG?
Right.
Comics Buyer's Guide. You would get information that way too. I was thinking about that Comics Journal was one, and Comics Scene, and then there was, I think, Comics Interview was another one that was a lot of fun to
Comics
get.
Reader?
There was Comics Reader as well. There was a lot of comics magazines for at one point there was a lot of them, because for a while there was nothing, or that I was aware of.
Right.
And then there was a ton of them, and then it's like they all kind of fizzled out almost all around the same time.
I've said many a time, oh, that book was so hyped up, that I'm like, where was it hyped? Where did I read about that? In 1979, I'm like, where was I reading about comics in 1979? I was like, I can't remember. What was available to me? I can't even remember now. But I'm like, something must have been, because I was reading about it.
Were you reading zines?
I don't know.
That was a big thing too. So I never had a subscription. I only heard about zines. Like there was a Batman one that was kind of famous.
After the summer of 1981, I could have been reading about stuff that I got from the comic shop, but I really didn't start going regularly for another year or so. But it's like, where was I reading about comics? I basically read anything about comics I could, but I don't remember where I got a lot of that news from. If I got news. It's strange. Memory again.
Yeah, by the time I knew about those magazines, I was only getting whatever information I got from Marvel Age and then Marvel's own ads
Yeah,
because there would be information. Because I always liked when they had the subscription page and you got at least, even though the postage stamp size, you got to see covers from issues coming up or what came out that month.
right.
And you try to figure, okay, I wouldn't write in my comic books. So it would be like a mental checklist. Did I get this book? Did I get this one?
I'm not trying to think. The comics history stuff I read was out of my library had the Steranko history of comics 1 and 2. I loved those. Smithsonian book of comics. All those Stan Lee written origin books. And
Oh, the Fireside books.
The Fireside books, right. And that's where I'd get my history of comics from.
Yeah, I got a few of my history would be from like my library in junior high, just when I just started getting to comics, had Superman from the 50s to 70s.
Oh yes, I forgot about those. Yeah.
So
Every
I would
library
read
had that.
book. Yeah, so I would read that book a lot, and I was so upset because there was a story there that did not finish in that book. It started in there, and it was with Superman's sand twin that he got punched into the sand, and the sand absorbed some sort of radiation, and then a creature came out of it that looked like Superman, but it was made out of sand, looking for Superman. And it's like, where's the next story? Because again, as a kid, I didn't know where to find it.
Yeah, there was no place to find it.
There was no place because it's like I didn't know what issue it was at that time, and it's like, man. And all I remember is like I believe that it was a that was most likely a Neil Adams issue.
I think there was a Batman from the 50s to the 70s too, but I don't think I ever saw that one.
Yes, there's Batman and there's a Shazam as well.
Oh, that's right. There was a Shazam one.
And I hear there's a Wonder Woman, but I've never seen it. And the Superman one is updated, so there's a second printing of that.
Superman from the 50s to the 80s, right?
Yes. Yeah. Give me a second, and I'll give you the covers. I'll show you the covers.
Show us the covers. And these were ones that libraries had. Like they were hardcover comics collection. Like libraries like to order hardcovers and not soft covers.
Yeah.
And trade paperbacks didn't exist in those days, which they don't like to order anyway. So it's like every library had the Smithsonian Book of Comics, Superman from the 50s to the 70s.
All right, so this
is the Batman one.
This is the Superman.
Yep.
This is the Superman updated one.
To the 80s, right?
Which is smaller.
Oh, look at that.
And then here's the Batman from the 30s to the 70s.
That's the one I never saw. My library did not have that one. That one's pretty thick.
And then we have Shazam from the 40s to the 70s.
I don't think I ever saw that one either.
I found this one on eBay, and is this the one? No, it's a Dick Tracy one. This one, unfortunately, it's falling apart.
Oh, okay.
So when I got it in the package,
put it in the microwave, soften the glue, and squish it back together.
Squish it back together. So when I got this and I opened it up, the whole thing, like the package, was just all full of the crumbling spine. So I guess the guy never opened it, or he didn't release that information that the spine itself was off.
Right.
The Batman one I found in a comic book convention. I bought it for, I believe, $25.
Not bad.
And the funny thing is, with the Batman one, it was signed by the Carmen Infantino signature is just all the books have them, but the one below it is Shelley, who was doing a bunch of the inking, I believe, at the time.
What is his name? Sheldon Dorff or something? Like
Sheldon Moldoff?
Moldoff. Okay. Yes, Moldoff. That's Sheldon Moldoff. Yeah.
So
Sheldon Dorff or someone else.
So the Superman one, like I said, I used to read it all the time in junior high, and I never saw it again until I was working in the comic book shop, and there was a used bookstore in the same town, and I happened to walk in it, and I bought it for $10.
Right.
So I bought it for what was the cover price of the time.
Edward says early 80s, I knew about Comic Scene at the regular mag. Yeah, I remember always trying to find Comic Scene. That wasn't around. I think it was around in the late 70s too. A couple of years later, I found out about the direct market and comics. Yeah, I found out about those in 81 when the comic shop opened. Oh, and let's not forget Dynamite magazine.
Dynamite magazine.
It was a magazine aimed at kids that often
Okay,
had.
yeah. Wasn't there also a Marvel version of it too, like Pep or
I
Peds?
think there may, but there was often like a Marvel strip in the back, and sometimes they told you about the superheroes and things.
Oh, okay. That I do recall that magazine, but it wasn't something that I picked up all the
Yeah, I
time
used to have a
or
subscription
ever
as a
picked
kid.
up.
Yeah.
And then what I liked about these design-wise was always the spines.
Oh,
It
cool.
had the heroes on it, and then the Superman updated one would have an updated Superman.
Nice. Well, we should say good night to everyone, because it's about our ending time.
Ah, yes, it is. So I'll save these for next time, but we also have the Superhero Dictionary
Oh,
and this Superman book that was more of about Superman. It was an encyclopedia.
all right. We'll take a look
Type
at
of
those
thing.
next time.
Yep.
Something to look forward to.
All right.
All right. Pizzazz was the Marvel version.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember that too. I had Pizzazz too.
Yeah, I remember seeing them, but I didn't buy them.
All right. Well, everybody have a good night out there.
All right. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Great weekend, and we will catch you next time.
Bye bye.
Take care.